Do 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 do. Check with Rumble. Do 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 do. Do 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 do.
I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati.
All right. Welcome back, guys. Happy Tuesday. Welcome to Sabby Sabs podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. If you are new, I want to let you know that Sabby Sabs podcast is a part of Revolutionary Blackout Network. You can catch me there on Thursdays and Fridays, and you can catch me here on Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and Sunday. And I do see my guest is here. Torraine, if you're ready, if you give me a thumbs up. All right. Welcome back, Torraine.
Hey, Sabby, how you doing? It's been a while.
It has been a while, I know. I was just thinking that the other day. I was like, man, I have to circle back with some of the guests that I brought on like that first year and bring people like back on. I've been crazy busy. I don't know about you, but I've been busy.
Oh, I've been busy. It's been a crazy, couple years and everything with the pandemic and everybody trying to find their footing. So yeah, I get it. A lot of people are coming back to what they normally do. So it's good to be here.
Awesome. So my special guest tonight is Torraine Walker. He is a journalist and a filmmaker. Torraine, welcome back. I know you've had a couple of projects that are going on. The first thing I want to show everybody is you actually were on a panel recently on, I think this was Roland show.
Oh, you mean on Roland Martin? Yeah.
Yeah. Eric, if we can get that link up, the first one into the ready, because I want to show that clip. I want to show everybody this clip because this is something that I think we've talked about this a little bit at RBN. Nick, he lives in Kansas City, Missouri. So like you, he was present during like the Ferguson protest. And Nick has been telling people this for a while, that a lot of the real on the ground activists just kind of either disappeared or they were arrested. You never heard from them again. And I think a lot of people want to give credit to the BLM organization. They always point towards like Tamika Mallory, and there's many criticisms there. But I want to play this clip for everybody of this panel from Roland's show, because you brought up a really good point here in reference to Black Lives Matter, the organization.
I've been waiting to have this conversation for a while. We're 9 years deep into this now. Ever since Ferguson started, There were brothers like Darren Seals and people who were on the ground who would call out some of these things and he got silenced. There were people who were close to the people who were connected to the ground who talked about these issues and he either got silenced or they either got marginalized or pushed completely out the way. Nobody said anything. And all of a sudden, after people in other cities have said had these conversations as well, again, nobody said anything. Nobody had anything to say until all of a sudden the story came out about $90 million and nobody said anything about, and people saw houses and mansions getting built. So my question is, what's happening now to make people so upset about the leadership that people weren't listening to 9 years ago? And why is it, what's happening today?
Sure. So we're actually stepping into 10 years. Black Lives Matter was birthed July 13th, 2013, which is the day that George Zimmerman was acquitted in the murder of Trayvon Martin. So we've been doing this work. People like me who've been on the ground since day one, who were people who were in Ferguson, who were people who were in, Baltimore and Los Angeles and all of the places that you saw uprising, right? Who were people who were just regular folks. I'm just a mama. I'm a mama of 3 kids. I never took a check, right? We've been saying things, but also I think more importantly, we viewed Black Lives Matter as a movement. So I've been less vocal about what's been happening inside of Black Lives Matter that I frankly have nothing to do with. I don't know about I do now, but at the time, I didn't know anything about dollars coming in or about, who's getting paid what. My concern and what I felt to be my sacred duty was to do work that makes the world safer for my children. And so when you're talking about people saying things, I think people were saying things, but more importantly, I think that the people, the boots on the ground, were most concerned with doing something,
Okay, that piece there. First and foremost, do you think that that's true that she didn't know about the money that was coming in? I mean, I think a lot of us that weren't even a part of the organization knew about the money that was coming in.
Yeah, I can't really speculate on what she did and did not know, but what I can say is that if you just look at the record and you look at the history, she was very connected to the people who are supposed to know. There's video of her and Patrice Cullors and Alicia Garza, being buddy and drinking champagne and eating cheese on the anniversary of George Floyd's death in the gigantic house that was bought with, I guess I'm assuming money that came in off the back of George Floyd's death. So I don't know what she was privy to, but I know she was close enough to the people who were that raises enough questions for me to ask.
That's right. And I thought you brought up a really good point there about they had all this money coming into the organization. Like, why not use that money to help get some of the grassroots, like on the ground activists out of jail? Because this is the thing I think a lot of people just have not been aware of. The real like grassroots on the ground activists, some of these people were arrested. Some of them were pulled into vans and you never heard from them again. Like, these are the people that you did not hear about. And I think Black Lives Matter just became like some type of brand. They were making like Cadillac commercials. And this is not to criticize the movement, so to speak. We're talking specifically about the organization. And it seems like it became this capitalist like organization that the Democratic Party, I feel, in some way, shape, or form infiltrated this organization. Now, some of the activists told me that they felt like BLM was actually infiltrated from the very beginning. I don't know about that, but those activists that were arrested, the ones that have disappeared, they haven't been given any type of spotlight. Like, they're not on the cover of magazines. I didn't see them in any type of Cadillac commercial. And I think it's just unfortunate because considering what happened to George Floyd and the mass movement of protests that we had across the world, this really could have elevated to something substantial and significant for people. And I felt like it just became a profit. And I want to get your opinion about that.
Well, there's a couple of things that people have to understand. There's the concept or the theory that Black Lives Matter, which is this concept and this theory that because you are Black in America and you have brown skin, your life, you deserve to live a life being free of being molested and being abused and being marginalized just because of your skin or killed by the police. That's what the concept of Black Lives Mattering means to the general public. Separate from that is the organization called Black Lives Matter, which is the group that was created on the backs of, Black people being killed by the police, institutionalized racism. That's the hard, basic thing that actually exists that people were able to donate to and see on the streets. Those are two separate concepts, but because they share a name, people assume the concept and the organization are the same thing. They are not. The second thing is the idea that Black Lives Matter, the organization, was the sort of the conduit for the groundswell of mass movement that happened around the world. That's not true as well. The people who were originally pushing back against the police were poor and working class people who did not have an organization. This was what you saw was sort of like a groundswell of things that were happening all over the country, whether it was in Ferguson, Missouri, whether it was in Baton Rouge, whether it was in Kansas City, whether it was in Minneapolis. It just so happened that because Black Lives Matter, the organization, had a brand name that people latched onto, people assumed that all these different things were part of one organization. But no, it was a movement of Black people who were tired of having their backs pushed against the wall and institutionalized racism. Black Lives Matter, the organization, was able to capitalize on that. And that's what I think people get confused.
Yeah, I'm so glad you pointed that out, because I think one of the big criticisms was that BLM bought like a $5 million house. That was a big thing. And for me, I was just sitting back thinking to myself, like, really? Like, that's what you did with all that money, like that you raised? Like, why not take that money and put it back into the community? Like, why not like invest that money into alternative programs to policing? So I don't know about you, but for me, I do approve of defunding the police. I know like it's a big like issue that a lot of people are just like, oh, don't want to touch that. But I do agree with defunding the police and creating some type of alternative programs instead. There have already been cities, at least on the local level, that have done that. They actually have created mental health programs. Instead of sending a police officer out to someone that has like a mental health issue, they're sending a mental health counselor, someone who knows how to deal with that. So there are different ways that this can be done. But I feel like because of what happened with Black Lives Matter, the organization, because of the profit motive, I feel like it kind of created like a bad name for the movement that happened on the ground.
Yeah, and that's the real tragedy of all this, because there are people who are legitimate activists who are doing this work and risking their lives and also coming up with really good grassroots based solutions to try to push back against, institutionalized racism in policing and in the United States. The problem is because of the name that organization is generated and the amorphous sort of like indecisiveness of that organization, what it's done is push people who may want to help away because they don't understand the difference between an organization and a movement, and they don't want to get themselves involved in it because they don't, first of all, they don't want to feel like they've been played, and second of all, because that organization has sucked up so much oxygen around these ideas that nobody wants to touch them, because first of all, they haven't been straightforward with the people on the ground who are part of their organization, and they haven't been straightforward with the public, at least their quote unquote leadership has, and that's the problem, and that's the tragedy in all this.
That's right. And I don't know if you saw this, but this actually came out recently. This was from Newsweek, and they said Black Lives Matter finances hit as donations fall. It says that Black Lives Matter finances suffered a blow after the nonprofit ran an $8.5 million deficit last year as donations fell. I think we can assume why the donations fell. But this was like a huge profit in the sense that like there were movie deals that were supposedly in place for Tamika Mallory. And I'm just like, there's one person or two people that are obviously like making a huge profit off of this. Like you're getting like Hollywood deals. I heard those deals from Tamika Mallory have now been canceled because she hasn't produced the content that they asked her to produce. And then it's just like the people are still being killed on the streets by police. And that's the thing that frustrates me. Everybody talked about George Floyd when it happened. Everybody, independent media covered it at some form or another. Some covered it more than others. But then it was like after that, Torraine, it just stopped. And people were still being killed by the police, like unarmed people still being killed by the police. So it's like I kind of looked around and I'm like, really? No, people aren't covering this story about this 11-year-old boy who's killed by the police. It's just very frustrating. And I feel like even when it came to the media spaces, it seemed like people talked about it at that time because it was beneficial for their platform. Yet police brutality is still continue to happen. And now I hear people don't even talk about the other stories that are more recent.
Yeah. I do want to say one thing. I think you're talking about Patrice Cullors. Patrice Cullors was the one who had a deal, I think, with Warner Brothers, and they canceled the deal, I think, a couple of weeks ago, from what, according to the news reports, because she hadn't produced any content. That's
Right.
that's who had the deal at Warner Brothers, I believe. So, I think she got. It's almost like a rapper getting dropped from a label, ironically. As far as the stories that are going on, as you said, if you have that much money coming in donations, my question is, how come you have not set up a media arm that automatically goes to these stories every time these sorts of things happen? That's more than enough money for a camera crew to fly out somewhere and tell these stories. That's more than enough money to set up your own media company or a media wing of your organization to stay on these stories. Because as we both know, the media is going to be what the media is going to be. They have a very short shelf life. This news cycle moves from one thing to the other. They don't have any sort of moral center, at least mainstream media. And it's up to the people who really are passionate about these stories to keep these things in front of the public. When the mainstream media moves away, it was George Floyd in 2020. It was whether it was climate crisis in 2021. It was the Ukraine in 2022 and 2023. The media moves the way they want to move. So if you're bringing in this sort of money, why don't you have people who are dedicated to telling these stories? How come you're not funding journalists to be able to go out and say these things? You know what I mean? Because obviously you have enough. And if you have connections in Hollywood, how come you don't have liaisons in that industry to be able to tell these stories even further? So I don't know. It's very strange. And it's very odd that all these resources are coming in, but nothing's being built. When you have organizations like the Panthers who are able to build nationwide programs and do a breakfast program and do trainings and go to people's houses and educate people with a whole lot less and the government on their back. So it's very suspect.
That's right. I mean, they could have had citizen journalists on the ground in different like cities covering these stories. I mean, I just saw recently there is a gentleman. I think he's a right wing, but there's a gentleman. His name James O'Keefe. He started this company where he's just basically hired all these people to be citizen journalists and go out on the street and expose corruption. I mean, they had all that money coming in. It's like they could have done the same thing. And I don't know if you noticed this, but now I've noticed police brutality cases aren't covered as much in mainstream media, or they're not covered for long. Like they may cover it like the first day and then they just move on to another story. Whereas George Floyd, that incident was talked about daily, I felt like.
Mm-hmm. I think part of that as well was the situation. George Floyd's murder happened during the pandemic where a lot of people were home and inside. So it was able to catch everybody's imagination. And there was the fact that there was that horrific video that everybody saw. So it was sort of like a culmination of everything we saw over the past 4 to 5 years leading up to that point. And the sad thing about this is the murder of George Floyd was the first time you had a worldwide movement and worldwide outrage about the plight of Black people in America in the hands of racist policing. And everybody around the world was almost on one accord about this is horrific and this needs to stop. There was momentum there that could have been moved into legislation. There was momentum that could have been moved into actual hard, legislation and administrative practices that could have really transformed policing in this country. And I feel like that moment was lost because people got caught up, as you said, in the profit motive, and people got blinded by cameras, and it became more of a thing where what happens is neoliberal media will often co-opt your movement and make it palatable for the masses with no real change happening. And I think that's what happened. And I think that's what happened with a lot of people in that organization, unfortunately. And it's just sad.
Yeah, I agree. Another thing that I noticed too, because this kind of leads me into what's happening right now with Cop City. And I don't know if everyone's been paying attention to this. If you have not, you definitely need to. There's new news coming out about Cop City every day. And Steve Dotzinger actually tweeted this out earlier. In the dead of night, Atlanta City Council voted 11-4 to approve $67 million for a police training center that will be an incubator for the criminalization of protests and attack on low-income communities. Pure cowardice. And what's interesting about this is when you look at the people who voted, what kind of made me cringe is that you have Black politicians who voted yes. Some of them voted no, but some of them voted yes. And so for people who are not aware, there were activists actually protesting in Atlanta in reference to Cop City. This has been going on for a while, but just yesterday they were protesting, trying to get these officials to at least talk to them. They wouldn't even speak to them. So they were there for like hours. And then this is like the end result. And when I connect this with BLM, I just feel like the way like the George Floyd movement took hold of the national landscape, I really do feel like if there had been some tangibles, like in reference to legislation on a national level, something like Cop City may have been prevented. What's your take on that?
I'm in Atlanta, and I think people had this idea of Atlanta as this black mecca and the quote unquote city too busy to hate. And that's true in some respects. But the flip side of that is that means that city's sometimes too busy to stand up to its moral history and to its legacy. Atlanta is one of the cities with some of the highest income inequalities in the country. And unfortunately, the majority of that income inequality is on the backs of poor black people. The people who are on the advertising of Atlanta, the people who you see in the suits, the people, the television, the people you see on TV shows and in the media, that's completely removed from the real life, daily lives of black people who live in this city. This is not surprising. People who are at City Hall, people who are in the state government, they may be black, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they follow in the legacy of like an Andrew Young or Maynard Jackson, people who had the best interests of the black citizens of Atlanta at heart, while still dealing with the power structure here. A lot of people here basically surrendered their moral integrity to the power structure here in the status quo, and they will fight to maintain their power at any cost, at the cost of anybody's life, at the cost of the poor black people in Atlanta's lives. And that's just a hard fact. They may look good and they trade on the legacy of Dr. King and all this stuff, like I said, but they don't really believe in that. They believe in staying in power. And unfortunately, we have black people who are more than willing to facilitate that. That's all you can say about that, and it's sad.
That's right. And Cop City is also, it's backed by corporations. It's backed by businesses. Coca-Cola backs Cop City. Banks are backing Cop City. And so like there's corporate profit to be made here as well. And what's really, I think, frustrating in reference to this, there was an activist, I covered this a while ago, that was killed by the police. He was protesting against Cop City. This was earlier on. The police said that he shot at them. Now, he was a climate activist. And I found that to be very odd. I'm like, when have climate activists shown up to protest with guns? That's usually not their thing. And so now there's more information coming out about that maybe the police were not truthful. Go figure. But I feel like Cop City should be a warning sign to everyone, even if you don't live in Atlanta, because this could happen in your city too. Maybe Atlanta is just the start of it. And I think they're trying to prevent more mass protests from rising up like we had with George Floyd.
No, I think that's true, and unfortunately, I think it's an excellent climate for that to happen because, as we said earlier, the public attention span is very short. If you don't have people constantly on these stories and telling people what's going on and informing them, these sort of things happen, quote unquote, for lack of a better term, in the dark of night, because if there's no media coverage, if people aren't being informed of this, if there's no video about this, like even if you go back to protests up until after George Floyd, there was always somebody with a camera or a cell phone taking pictures of what was going on and videotaping this. And you had media coverage of this. You don't even see that anymore. And tying it to your point earlier, I think some of the situation that happened with BLM is a part of this because I think there's some media burnout. And I also think there's some media frustration at people who greenlight these stories because there was no real movement on these stories when it was a national story for like sustained amounts of time for almost a year. And I don't want to lay that at the feet of that organization, but I do believe that the fact that there was so little pushback and people are seeing all this effort that they put into the idea of BLM falling by the wayside and basically going the line of the people outside of any real movement, I think that's got a chilling effect. And again, that's tragic.
Torraine, where is the mayor on this? Because for people who are not aware, like Torraine was saying, like people do often think of Atlanta as like a black mecca. Atlanta is very different from the very first time I visited Atlanta years ago. People have to understand, like Atlanta is not the same Atlanta that it was like in the 90s, where everybody, let's move to Atlanta because R&B groups were starting there, like TLC and all that kind of stuff. Like it's not the same anymore. There's gentrification happening in Atlanta, just like a lot of other cities. Buckhead, I've been to Buckhead once. Buckhead is expensive, in my opinion. I also saw there was some type of legislation being mentioned to separate Buckhead from the rest of Atlanta. Like for me, it's just, I think people need to understand that just because this is a city where the population may be predominantly Black, although I think that is changing, and you do have a Black mayor, where did they stand on this issue with Cop City? You would think they would want to protect or go along with what's going to protect the community.
Atlanta has Black leadership in name only. Real estate developers really run Atlanta. CEOs really run Atlanta. As far as the mayor, Andre Dinkins, I think what he's trying to do, and this is just my speculation, I feel like what he's trying to do is be on both sides of the fence. And what I mean by that is he's a Black man. He represents sort of like that image of the Black mayor in charge of a Black city. And as long as he can keep that image out in front of the public outside of the city, he'll be just fine. Inside the city, I think most people feel like he is, how can I say this? I think they feel like he is basically there to rubber stamp a lot of things that go on in the city without offering any sort of real critique and any real pushback. He's been on a couple of public forums where he's taken some criticism, but there hasn't been any real hard movement from his office on his end about a lot of this stuff. He keeps a lot of things, I think, close to the vest until they're done, and then he gets in front of them. But he's sort of like the tradition of the mayors that we've had up until who was it? Who was here before? When Freaknik was here, when Bill Campbell was here. He sort of started out this trend of the sort of like the corporate mayor, where like he has the right imagery, he looks good, he goes out and waves at people, but then he goes back just to doing rubber stamps, things that aren't beneficial to the Black population of Atlanta. And that's how it's been ever since like the mid 90s. This is not the Atlanta people recognize. This is very much a gentrified, corporate focused city. And the few Black people who can benefit from that are doing just fine. Everybody else is just trying to get through day to day. And you don't see that a lot. So it's not what you think it is.
And Atlanta was one of the cities where there were protests for George Floyd. And there were actually people who are, I guess, quote unquote, like celebrities that participated in those protests as well, in Atlanta. So for me, it's really frustrating. I think one of the big things that really bothered me is when someone says to me, well, we had the protest for George Floyd, but there were no demands. I had this conversation recently with Norm Finkelstein, and I said, that's not true. The demand was to defund the police. And you guys, he was like, well, I don't like the phrase and da. I was like, yeah, but there was a demand there. And I know it didn't happen on the national level, but in some of the local communities, there were some changes that were implemented in reference to policing. One of the big things people have said is that they felt like the phrase defund the police wasn't the right phrase. Like it scared people and made them think, oh, we're not going to have police at all anymore. What do you think about that? Because I was told that the reason why that phrase was chosen was so that it would not be co-opted.
You know, on the one hand, I agree with that. Defund the police is a very direct statement. I think the people who crafted that message fell down in is they did not do a good job in explaining what they meant by that. You can take a phrase. There's a phrase called language capture where a phrase can be sort of like inert and have a sort of like a neutral meaning. And what you invest into that phrase turns into whatever you want that phrase to mean. Defund the police, I think it does scare people who are not connected to Black movements and just movement work. It sounds really good on paper and it sounds real good in the street. But then when you have to take that into negotiating, you have to actually make that phrase mean what you want it to mean. And I do agree that in different cities, defunding the police means different things. And because there was so little oxygen given to what that phrase meant, I think that what that meant was people who were enemies of that phrase and enemies of the whole idea were able to take that message and make it mean what they wanted it to mean. You know, all it really means is basically taking away some of the military hardware and some of the paramilitary police policies that happened and that we saw in the Black Lives Matter and also a little bit to a lesser extent in Ferguson. I don't have a problem with the phrase. I think that what happened was there was no real unified meaning of what that meant. And the people who crafted that message, like I said, again, did not do a good job of getting on the press and telling people what that meant by defunding the police and giving examples of how you can have better policing by not having this armed paramilitary, this almost like quasi-fascist idea of what policing looks like. And I think that's where it fell down at, in my opinion.
How do you think people feel in Atlanta knowing that it looks like Cop City is going to proceed? How do you think people feel in Atlanta, particularly Black people in Atlanta? Like for me, I wouldn't feel safe.
Unfortunately, I think the majority of Black people in Atlanta are going to forget about this within a couple of days. The people who the people who agitate, and the people who keep these social issues in front of the public, they're always a very small group of people. And if you don't have constant messaging outside of your group of people who believe like you do to get this out into the public is going to keep on doing what they're doing. They're going to worry about going to work. They're going to worry about their everyday lives, and they're not going to go think any further than that. That's just the nature of human beings. And unless you have qualified messaging that constantly hammers in the dangers of what can go on if you allow these things to continue, and if you allow them to grow in other cities, the people aren't going to really understand what's going on, and they're not going to get energized and activated until it's too late. And I hate to say it that way, but that's just the hard truth. You got to have consistent messaging outside of a slogan. If you ride around the city, you'll see those slogans of Stop Cop City everywhere. But I don't think there's enough education to the people to tell them exactly what that means. It's just another slogan like Black Lives Matter, or it's another slogan that looks good. But if you don't educate the people again and get people understanding the urgency of trying to stop this, nothing's going to really move. And I think it may be a little bit too late for the city of Atlanta. I hate to be pessimistic, but this is just how I feel.
Do you feel like we're moving towards a militarized police state?
I think we're already in a militarized police state. We're just waiting for something to happen to make it official. And I think that's nationwide. I think we had a moment where you could have pushed back on it in 2020 when people around the world saw the situation and how people reacted to George Floyd, to the protests against the protests with George Floyd. But I think that moment might have been lost. I think that because of, again, some of the missteps with this organization, the idea of pushing back against militarized police lost a lot of momentum. And there hasn't been anything to take its place to keep that momentum going, because there's been so much infighting within an organization, and there hasn't been any other groups to be able to coalesce and take over that mantle and push back and say, we stand for this, and this is what we want. So I don't want to be completely pessimistic about it, but right now it doesn't look good. You know what I mean? I feel like something has to happen, and somebody has to, with integrity, has to step in front of these things and say that this is what we stand for and this is what we want to see move.
Torraine, have you seen any of the celebrities in Atlanta? Because for those who don't know, there are a lot of celebrities that live in Atlanta. Maybe some like from the music industry, or there are also some from reality TV. There's movie stars who live in Atlanta. Have you seen any of them get out in front of this issue with Cop City? Like, for example, is Usher involved in this? Is anyone from, I know Portia from Real Housewives of Atlanta, for people who don't know, she actually comes from a family of activists. Like, her grandfather walked with Dr. King. Like, it's a really big deal, like in her family. Have any of them joined this effort to stop Cop City?
Not that I've seen. The only person really who's been active in things that I have actually seen is Killer Mike. I've seen Killer Mike show up to things where the cameras aren't there, where there's people, trying to do city council meetings or having town halls and that sort of stuff. But as far as celebrities, I think the momentum on celebrities getting into activism pretty much died out with the George Floyd thing. And especially in going back to what you said earlier, I think the situation with the Black Lives Matter organization has made a lot of celebrities very wary of dipping into situations like this, because they don't know who is who and they don't know who to trust. And a lot of these celebrities get information handed to them. And if they're not connected to what's going on, I think they don't want to risk any of their reputation to be seen out front on anything. If something happens where more celebrities start getting active in this, you'll see celebrities show up again. Wherever there's a camera and it looks good, celebrities will show up. But right now, no.
That's a good point. The Democratic Party, now, obviously, Joe Biden was able to win the state of Georgia. There was a strong focus there on the suburban white neighborhoods outside of Atlanta, that I guess really brought it home for him. What are you hearing from people now? And I asked that question because Joe Biden said that he was going to relieve like student loan debt for students that went to HBCUs. He said this in Atlanta at HBCUs. How are people feeling, particular African Americans in the Atlanta area, about Joe Biden for 2024?
Well, to answer that, you have to understand that in Atlanta, there's several different stratas of Black voter. You have the traditional Black voter that the Democratic base caters to, which is like, 50, 55 and up, the people who sort of grew up with the civil rights movement and had those stories, and they understand the importance of voting. Those are the people who are all going to be all the way in for Biden. because they can be easily appealed to with the history of Martin Luther King, and they can easily pull out the, you know, the old black and white photos of the police dogs biting people and the students getting rolled down the street with fire hoses and everything. That messaging works for them. You have the upper middle class to middle class voters who aren't really vocal about politics, but they're going to vote with their wallets. And if it's advantageous to them to vote Democratic because it's good for their business, they'll vote Democratic. If it's advantageous for them to vote Republican because it helps for their business and their taxes, they'll vote Republican. They just won't talk about it in dinner parties and things like that. You also have the strata of voter from 18 to maybe like 30, 34, who I think are very disillusioned with the Democratic Party because they're the ones who went all in for the Obama years, and they saw how that benefited some people and didn't benefit others. They went reluctantly into the Clinton years, and then a lot of people don't like Clinton because of her history, you know, with black voters. They didn't like Biden at all because they know the crime bill, and a lot of people I know for a fact did not vote for Biden because of the crime bill, and they didn't vote for Kamala because of her record in California. And a lot of them got browbeaten into voting, but they quietly sat home. So I'm saying I think there's three different stratas of voter in Atlanta who feel a certain way about the Democratic Party in 2024. But I'll tell you right now, a lot of black voters are not going to vote for Joe Biden. They're just frustrated. They're tired of the messaging that they got in 2020, where it was like, you know, if you don't vote for Joe Biden, you're not black. Or they're tired of a lot of the browbeating by a lot of corporate people and a lot of corporate shills and a lot of Democratic shills who tell them you're weak or you're stupid if you don't vote for Biden. That might have worked in 2020, but it put a lot bad taste in people's mouths. And now that we've had 4 years of seeing what's going on, they're not going to go for it. It's going to be a battle between like the traditional black voter that the Democratic Party caters to and the disillusioned, pissed off, and disaffected black voter who's a lot younger. So it's going to be a battle in Atlanta, I think, this time. It's not going to work like it did in 2020.
Yeah, I think that things are going to be different this time around. And that brings me into Cornel West. I'm sure as you know, Cornel West's recent announcement that he's running for president with the People's Party outside of the duopoly. I look at someone like Cornel West. I'm going to talk about this a little bit later in the show, but I look at someone like Cornel West as beloved among people of all demographics and all different ages. Older people like Cornel West, young people like Cornel West. And so I think, and for me, I was just like, wow. Like I was really surprised because I asked him if he would ever be interested in running before, but I was really surprised that he's going forward with that and he's going to run outside the duopoly. What do you think about that? What do you think about Cornel West dipping his toe into the sand, so to speak? And how do you feel about him running with the People's Party? Because I know some people are not too happy about that.
Yeah. First of all, I'm elated that Cornel West is running. And anything that breaks up this duopoly that we have in America when it comes to political action and political parties, I'm for it. I think he has probably the best chance of creating a groundswell since Bernie, I believe, because off of name recognition. And I think he's very, very good on, obviously he's very good at public speaking. So it's going to be interesting to see him on the stump. You know what I mean? Now, political campaigning is a lot different than academic speaking, but I think he has enough pull to be able to pull that off. Now, as far as what's going to happen, I think what's going to happen, and I've already seen some of this, some of his most virulent detractors are going to come from the Democratic side, because when it comes to black voters, the people who are, and I like to call them the Negro whisperers, these are the people who the Democratic Party sends out to talk to black voters. Nothing scares them more than the idea of somebody outside of their circle getting the ear of the black voter, because they're so entrenched in the Democratic Party and they're so rabid about keeping their position that anything that threatens that, they're going to fight tooth and nail. That's going to be fun to see, because you're going to see a lot of skin folk come out and be violently against this man and pull out things from 20 years ago that they don't agree with. And they're going to attack this man. Like I said, I'm going to put some things up maybe later on that I've already seen happening. Now, I think what's going to happen, he's going to pull away a lot of true progressives and independent voters who vote for the Democratic Party because they don't have any other option. He's going to move them away from the Democratic establishment. And it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. And it's going to be interesting what kind of platform he stands on when he gets out there on the stump. Now, as far as the People's Party, I'm well aware that there's issues with the People's Party and their leadership. But in my opinion, and this is just my opinion, those issues, while they are real serious issues, they do need to be addressed, and they need to be addressed quickly. They're nowhere near as serious as the issues that the Democratic establishment and the Republican establishment has been able to perpetrate in this country for the past 50 years, in my opinion. So I think it's just, instead of playing the lesser of two evils, maybe we need to think about maybe fixing some things in the third option and go from there. Because there's no perfectly clean party in this country. But I feel like the party that has the possibility to become a third way that can be built on and can be adjusted and can be changed, may be the way to go and maybe an option for Black voters in America.
Well said, Corn. I think like one of the things that was really interesting to me was the race between Herschel Walker and I always forget his name, Warnock.
Raphael Warnock.
Yeah. And I remember watching that live and just thinking to myself, like, for Warnock to even be the incumbent, the fact that it was even that close, like that was crazy to me. What did you hear from people in reference to that? I was like, you shouldn't even be this close to Herschel Walker. That I think that should be a big wake up call for Democrats.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I heard from a lot of people in Atlanta and Georgia. It was like, how can Herschel Walker even get to be a contender, to be even get close to Raphael Warnock, to be able to even get on the debate stage? That here's the thing. I think that was not so much a referendum on Raphael Warnock. I think it was more truth of the fact that the Republicans go all out for whoever they back. The Republicans, right or wrong, good or bad, whether it's a good candidate or whether it's a bad candidate. And I do believe Herschel Walker was a bad candidate. But if Herschel Walker had the possibility to unseat Raphael Warnock, no matter how horrible he was on the podium, no matter how much potential damage he may be having from his football career, they're going to back him 100% and they're going to push him because the Republicans believe in winning. They don't care who you run. As long as you have the potential of winning, they will put all their resources, all their money behind you. And he had nonstop campaigning in the city of Atlanta and in Georgia. There were like constant television ads. There were mailers going out every single day about Herschel Walker because, first of all, he had serious name recognition in Atlanta because he was a football player, and this is the South. And being a football player in the South is almost like being like one of Jesus's disciples. People will follow you no matter what you say. That's just the culture here. And they knew how to work the culture. The Democrats, unfortunately, what happens in Georgia is they bring in a lot of consultants from outside the state, and they let them craft the messaging that doesn't resonate with the people in the state. And that's how you have so many people who lose a lot of times who are really good candidates in Georgia. So I think that's what that was. It's just the fact that the Republicans back their people no matter what. The Democrats look for perfect people, and that's where they fall down.
Why do you think Stacey Abrams lost? Do you think it's true that I don't believe this is true, but she said that Black men didn't come out and support her? That's not what the polls showed based on what I saw. But why do you think people didn't come out and heavily support Stacey Abrams?
I'm so glad you asked me that. First of all, that is a lie. No, it wasn't Black men. The people who said that were people who were in academia who were trying to basically lick their wounds because they didn't want to deal with the truth. When Stacey was running, I had a conversation with one of her consultants who ironically was from outside of the state. The reason Stacey did not win, or the reason she lost as bad as she did, is because her campaign people put all her focus on the people who already she had a lock on. And I'm talking about the white gentrifying people who already lived in gentrified parts of Atlanta, who already had Stacey Abrams signs already on their lawns. She put all her focus on them. What Stacey did not do was she did not take her campaign to the street. Stacey did one thing that was really good. When she launched her second campaign, she did a Black men's meet and greet and an issue forum at Fellowship, which is Cam Newton's cigar bar in Castleberry Hill in downtown. A lot of prominent Black men meet there on the weekends to chop up the issues and just smoke a cigar. I thought that was really good messaging, but what she did not do, she did not take her message to the Black barbershops. She did not take her issues to the Black churches. She did not take her issues to the hair salons. She focused on the well-off, middle-class white people who she already had a lock on. Black people in Atlanta did not know who she was. They knew her name, but they did not know her. For people to be on your side in Atlanta, you got to physically put your feet on the street and go talk to people. If that means going out on the block, if that means going to the hood, if that means going to the churches, you got to do that. And she did not do that. She kept so focused on the gentrifiers and the people who already she had her, who basically were in her corner, that nobody else felt like they needed to do anything. You got to motivate people to go out and vote for you. And if you don't talk to Black people on the ground in Atlanta, you're not going to win. And that's what happened. People from outside of the city told her how to move, and you saw the result. And I told people on her campaign, do not do this. And did they listen to me? Nope. And what happened? Who's the governor?
I'll take that comment on Rockfin, Eric, real quick. There is a comment here. I think it's from Roger Meadows. Yeah. Thank you so much for the tip, Roger. The enemy is saying mission accomplished. Also, Atlanta is not only the capital of Georgia, but it is also the county seat of Fulton County, with a small section extending into DeKalb County. Understand, although Georgia may not be a citizen ballot initiative state, Fulton and DeKalb County allow for local ballot measures so that the voters of those counties can pass a law that says no more cop city. That's a good point, Roger. Thank you so much for saying that. One more thing I wanted to pick your brain about, Torraine. I've been asking people that have been coming on lately who have been independent journalists or commentators about advice for people who are interested in pursuing that path. Considering there's more censorship now. Every time I turn around, someone's being like demonetized or taken off a platform, etc. What advice would you give to someone who's thinking about doing independent journalism today?
Well, I don't normally like to give advice, but I will say this. The one thing I will say is that going into this sort of thing, it's not going to be easy. Um, find your people and build your audience, and be sure that you have an audience that's willing to help fund what you do, because it takes money to do something like this on a daily basis. It takes money to keep these things generating. A lot of journalists don't like to talk about that, independent journalists, but you're always going to have your back against the wall if you're not tied to a corporate sponsor, or if you're not tied to people who really believe in what you do. Just understand you have to start this from a labor of love and a love of informing the people, and understand that you're going to have some hard days, but the rewards are going to be much better at the end of the day. And you're going to be able to look yourself in the mirror and be able to tell yourself that you inform the people. So as far as advice, just be sure you have everything lined up, and don't be afraid to ask your people to support what you do. They will eventually come. It's not going to be easy, but they will come. And don't betray those people who put their faith in you.
Well said. Torraine, before you go, where can people find you?
You can find me online at torrainewalker.com. That's my website. You can find me on social media, at Twitter at torrainewalker.com. I'm on TikTok, believe it or not, at torrainewalker.com. I mean, at Torraine Walker. My IG, pretty much all my stuff is Torraine Walker, TorraineWalker. You put those in, all my stuff comes up. Fortunately, nobody else has my name, and I have it copywritten, so you're good there.
Awesome. A lot of people don't know this if you're a newbie, but Torraine was one of my first guests that came on when I started this show. First guest. So
well, that's right. I was. Yeah.
Yep. I didn't even have a mic. I didn't even have an external mic back then. So
I see you doing your thing, and you're getting some very good people on your show. So much love to what you're doing. I see you and respect.
Thank you so much. Thanks so much for coming on, Torraine.
My pleasure, Sab.
All right, guys. Hope you learned something there from Torraine. Follow Torraine on Twitter. He's always on Twitter. Follow him on his socials. Follow his website. He does really good work. And I would like to see him on more people's shows as well. Like, Torraine does really good work. So we are going to go ahead and shout out patrons. We'll show the thumbnail. We got a lot of stories to discuss tonight. We will do call in tonight, as I'm sure you guys are going to want to talk about some of these topics tonight. So we will do that as well. Really quick, want to give a shout out to everyone who is a Sabby patron. Thank you guys so much for your support. If you're interested in being a Sabby patron, I have 5 categories: Ultimate, Sabinators, Sabsters, Sabbies, and of course, members. You can see all of their names here, and you can also see their names scrolling across the bottom of the screen. Thank you so much. And I shouted out Gwen last show, so I'll just need to adjust that. Thank you guys so much. Really do appreciate that. Okay, we have a lot to talk about tonight. The news has been crazy. I don't know if you guys have been paying attention, but we have some things to discuss. I'm going to go ahead and share that beautiful thumbnail for you. So let's dive right in. All right, tonight we are discussing Cornel West 2024. Yes, we're going to dive into that. Cornel West is running for president through the People's Party. We're going to get into all that. And Cornel West will be here Thursday evening, so don't miss that. We're also going to discuss RFK Jr. Oops, man, not having a good week. We're going to get into what happened recently with RFK and Rabbi Schromer. Hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly. We're going to get into that in reference to Israel and Palestine. We're also going to discuss Max Blumenthal pipeline. What happened in reference to the Nord Stream pipeline? The gray zone has made a significant discovery. We're going to talk about that. We're also going to discuss the Humanist report shock. Something has happened to the Humanist report. We're going to talk about that. And I think this is actually, it's one story, but I think it's actually a bigger issue that we need to discuss in reference to this platform. And of course, Torn Walker was just here. So let's go ahead and dive right in. Okay. We've talked about this before in reference to the Nord Stream pipeline on this show. It was actually Seymour Hersh who wrote an article via Substack explaining that he had information that showed that basically the U.S. actually blew up the Nord Stream pipeline. Now, obviously, there has been pushback from that in reference to the White House and mainstream media as well. But Seymour Hersh has been uncovering more information as we've gone along. And now we have information from the gray zone that actually may lean more Seymour Hersh's way. If you have not seen this, shout out to those of you that sent this article to me. And I have a clip that I'm going to show from Max as well. This boot is significant, and I'm going to explain why. The Gray Zone said, independent Nord Stream expedition discovers clue missed by official investigators. And this is by Jeffrey Brodsky. So here it is. The Gray Zone participated in what appears to be the first independent expedition investigating the sabotage of the Nord Stream pipelines. Near one of the blast sites, we discovered a diving boot used by U.S. Navy divers. How did Swedish investigators miss this? So this is huge. This is significant.
Okay, so I'm sitting here with Eric Anderson, and Eric has looks like an interesting device in his hand. It is May 23rd, late afternoon, and we are in the Danish exclusive economic zone, and we are right above one of the blast sites of the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. So Eric, what are you going to be doing here?
Well, I'm going to go down along a line. There is a buoy, and it would have been nice if the captain had told me exactly if that buoy is on the west side or the east side of the pipeline. But I'm going to go down there, and I was there before, so I know. I think I'm going to try to look at the depth, because I have the depth profile, and the depth will tell me something about where I am. And once I know where I am, I'm going to decide whether to go east or west or north, because I only really have a compass. Okay, let's go.
So this is first mate.
So here we go.
Rico Fries. He's just thrown our drone in the water, and we'll see if we can get some images of the Nord Stream 2 pipeline.
Isn't it interesting what you can do with technology these days?
So you see here, we're going towards the buoy, and here I see the buoy. I'm turning on the film. I'm turning on the lights, and I'm starting to go down. And this looks
So earlier on our sonar, we captured some images, sonar images of large ruptures in the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, and now we're going to try to do the same, but using the drone.
Yeah, so I wanted to show you that so you can actually see that they were physically there. I just wanted to show you that. So great work by Jeffrey. So it goes on to say, let me go down here. The Gray Zone has identified a model which closely resembles this boot and is used by both U.S. Navy and commercial divers. Ukrainian Navy divers have also been seen wearing similar boots. Hold on to this piece here, the Ukrainian divers, because I have another revelation I'm going to reveal to you as well today. We have also learned that the boot's presence had been previously reported to investigators, yet they have not collected it or divulged its existence. So the Swedish investigators basically pretended like this boot didn't even exist. Why would they do that, right? Because it goes against the narrative that came from the State Department, which was that Russia blew up the Nord Stream pipeline. And we've talked about this before. We're expected to believe that Russia blew up their own pipeline, their own bridge. Like, none of this makes any sense, but a lot of people have fallen for this. So shout out to the Gray Zone for independent journalism. And here we have video footage here. So this is underwater. Let me get my little cursor out the way. There's the boot. Now, what I want to know, for the divers who were there, you lost your boot. You didn't feel the boot come off. Like, what happened? Das Boot. There it is. So again, I wanted to show you the video footage so you could see that it wasn't just a picture that someone took and placed in this article here. Now, we've talked about before what took place in reference to the Nord Stream pipeline. You can see the map here. But this is very significant, you guys, because how is it that the Gray Zone can show up there, independent journalists, and they can do their due diligence in reference to reporting, but no one else can seem to do this, right? So what's really significant here is that the Gray Zone released this information, and Eric, you can put the link to the article in the chat. They released this information, and now the Washington Post, this is very interesting. All of a sudden, they have decided to reveal maybe it wasn't Russia after all. And I find it very strange that this article was released by the Washington Post after the article from the Gray Zone was published. Coincidence? I don't think so. U.S. had intelligence of detailed Ukrainian plan to attack the Nord Stream pipeline. Come again? Let's go into it. Look, they want to admit now, they're finally admitting that it wasn't Russia. 3 months before saboteurs bombed the Nord Stream natural pipeline, the Biden administration learned from a close ally that the Ukrainian military had planned a covert attack on the undersea network using a small team of divers who reported directly to the commander-in-chief of the Ukrainian armed forces. I want to highlight this first sentence. 3 months before the Nord Stream pipeline was bombed, the Biden administration learned from a close ally that the Ukrainian military had planned a covert attack on the undersea network 3 months before, which means that the Biden administration could have prevented this. This is huge news. Now, don't get me wrong, the Washington Post is super late. Super late, because independent media had already revealed this. The Gray Zone had covered this. Seymour Hersh had revealed this, that it was not Russia that blew up the Nord Stream pipeline. So the Washington Post is late. So what I want to know is who gave the okay for the Washington Post to publish this information, and why reveal it now? I believe it's revealed now because the Gray Zone published that article which showed the boot. You can't make this up. You really can't. Once again, you're supposed to trust them, though. You're supposed to trust mainstream media. You're supposed to trust the New York Times, the Washington Post. You're supposed to trust these people, but they didn't even get their information correct. But independent journalists did. Somebody owes Seymour Hersh a huge apology. Details about the plan, which have not been previously reported, were collected by European Intelligence Service and shared with the CIA in June of 2022. June of 2022. They provided some of the most specific evidence to date linking the government of Ukraine to the eventual attack in the Baltic Sea, which U.S. and Western officials have called a brazen and dangerous act of sabotage on Europe's energy infrastructure. all of these countries that were depending on that pipeline, that have struggled over the past year, somebody seriously is going to have to give Russia an apology. And I want to see if the Biden administration will address this. Now, let's not forget that Jose, Vega, and other activists have confronted politicians that are a part of the Biden administration about this particular issue. They've confronted politicians about the Nord Stream pipeline bombing as well. They've also confronted journalists from the Washington Post, from the New York Times, about their information about the Nord Stream pipeline and Seymour Hersh's article. And they were dragged out of these venues when they were just asking the question, why aren't you talking about Seymour Hersh's article? So now, all of a sudden, it's okay for them to say that Russia didn't do it. I am going to sit back and pay close attention this week because I really, really, really want to hear what the Biden administration has to say about this. A press conference is due today. They should have done this today. Let's go on. The European intelligence report was shared on the chat platform Discord. Discord is making the rounds. Discord is revealing Pentagon documents, everything. Allegedly by the Air National Guard member, Jack Teixeira. Remember, this is the 21-year-old, right? He's in prison right now. They have him in custody. The Washington Post obtained a copy from one of Teixeira's online friends. The intelligent report was based on information obtained from an individual in Ukraine. The source's information could not be immediately corroborated, but the CIA shared the report with Germany and other European countries last June, according to multiple officials familiar with the matter, who spoke on the condition of anonymity to discuss sensitive intelligence operations and diplomatic discussions. I mean, all of these outlets owe Seymour Hersh an apology. The statement that was released from the White House, they need to retract that statement in reference to his article where they said it was utterly false and complete fiction. They need to reverse all of that. Now, Max Blumenthal recently talked about this on Rising. Listen to what Max had to say about this. By the way, Max has been making the rounds this week. The Gray Zone has been killing it.
Well, this is not the only discovery that's been made by this expedition. This is just the first in what will likely be a multi-part investigation. A small expedition on a boat called the Baltic Explorer, led by a Swedish engineer named Erik Andersson, embarked to the sites of the Nord Stream pipelines. I believe it's the first independent expedition to the blast sites where $23 billion pipelines were blown up in the worst act of industrial sabotage, severing Germany from its supply of cheap energy from Russia in an obvious attack on both Russia and Germany. And we managed at the Gray Zone to get a reporter on that boat, to get him a seat on that boat. His name is Jeffrey Brodsky. And they sent drones underwater at the blast sites and found, among other things, a boot. It is a diver's boot, an outer boot. We confirmed it to be a Thor outer boot. This is a boot that has been seen in use by U.S. Navy divers. A similar boot called the Viking has also been seen in use. Ukrainian divers have been seen with similar boots. It has also been used by commercial divers, especially in contaminated areas.
But not Russia. I want to remind you again that Germany just entered a recession. Who's gonna apologize for this? Who? Where is everybody? Where's all the politicians that voted to send billions of dollars to Ukraine? Where are they at? All of you have mud on your faces right now. All of you. This is embarrassing. If I was a politician that voted for that funding, I would be embarrassed right now. If I was one of the mainstream media outlets that blamed Russia for this, I would be embarrassed right now. And you wonder why more people are turning away from mainstream media. You wonder why their ratings are decreasing. This is a hot mess. Back to Das Boot.
And so we determined that this was a clue that should at least be looked at. We're committed to getting all the evidence out there because the investigations, the official investigations by Sweden, for example, have not made their findings public, and it's been 8 months. So we've learned that Nord Stream 2, the company that owns these destroyed pipelines, had actually reported the boot to Swedish investigators. We also learned through a source that Swedish divers had never even visited this site, so it can't be one of their boots. But the question is, why didn't the Swedish investigative team show any interest in this? Are they even interested in learning who the perpetrators are?
Or were they paid off? Were they told not to mention it? Who are these investigators? Shouldn't the White House be doing everything they can right now to get them on the phone?
It's sort of seems like a major oversight.
Yeah, I can definitely see someone making the case that multiple types of people of various national origins have access to these boots, that there is reporting at this point that it could have been, Ukrainian nationals, although there's still a denial that the Ukrainian government was involved. And so the boot is not that much of a red flag, except for it is interesting finding out that there was knowledge of the boot, but a failure to disclose the boot, which really does raise the question, what else might not have been disclosed and how thorough were these investigations that we're supposed to be relying on as having, cleared the U.S. from being involved. So
that's right. And one thing I want to add too, like it would be different if they didn't know about this, but we know that they knew. We know that it was reported. So why would they not include this in their investigation? This is why I say question everything. Question everything.
What else? First of all, I would love to hear a little bit more about how you gained access to this expedition, and also anything else that you learned that you think might be more significant than the discovery of the boot in and of itself.
Well, the engineer, Eric Anderson, gained access through permits by notifying Swedish and Danish maritime authorities about the expedition, and he gained the relevant permits through the Swedish Defense Authority, which also raises questions about why no one else bothered to do this. He then sent drones underwater and filmed the blast sites. And so I think there's more coming. Hopefully there will be more coming with expert analysis on the size of the blasts, how much explosives were possibly used, the placement of the explosives, and this will be highly relevant to making an attribution about who the perpetrators are. And right now, in my view, the most likely perpetrator is the United States, as put forward by Seymour Hersh, who speculated that massive amounts of some kind of C4 explosives were planted in the mud below the pipelines by U.S. Navy divers in coordination with Norway. And this attack was celebrated by everyone from Assistant Secretary of State Victoria Nuland to Secretary of State Tony Blinken, who called it a major economic opportunity. The U.S. liquid natural gas industry is celebrating this enormously. So they seem to be the most likely perpetrators. As you said, Ukrainians are also suspected. But what's important here is...
I'm going to add an allegedly. Okay. I know someone said in the chat, be careful, Max. Yeah, I'm going to add an allegedly. But this just means that someone intentionally screwed up Germany's economy. If I was Germany, listen, if you're watching now and you live in Germany, if I were you, I'd be pissed.
That the whole media, with so much more resources than us, has neglected to do this. And the official investigators have kept their findings from the public and are not scraping up these clues from the ocean floor. When we came across the boot with the drone, it almost seemed absurd that it was there. And then even more absurd that no one had bothered to collect it and examine it. So let's let this play out. And hopefully this will actually force the official investigators to actually do some work. The problem is they might wind up biting the hand that feeds them as members of NATO. Pointing the finger at the US seems to be off limits for these vassal states.
And one of the things I want to add as well, you notice you watch the video when he put the drone into the water. You see how easy that was for them to do? So the other investigators could have done the same thing. I don't think they were trying to find the truth. I think they were trying to find enough information to fit the narrative of the State Department. I think that's what they were trying to do. That was easy. That's why I wanted to show you the video in the article. Look how easy he did that. This was what?
Mainstream media has been slowly pivoting away from, oh, why would Russia do this? You know, realizing that that made no sense, to a kind of, well, I guess we'll never know. It's a mystery, but who really cares? Is it that important? Do you predict any kind of revisiting of that approach, you know, in the face of mounting evidence that the statements by U.S. officials that, right, not just celebrating it after it happened, but predicting that something like this would occur, a vague kind of menacing threat that something like this would occur.
Right.
You know, when does that, when does that combination of all those factors draw some mainstream attention?
Yeah, especially from the German mainstream media. I mean, it's their economy that's on the chopping block here.
Yeah.
They don't really have an economic plan B. So where is the outrage? Why are German officials so circumspect, if not reticent, about the worst act of industrial sabotage attacking their critical infrastructure?
I'm going to try to see if I can interview a politician from Germany to get their take on this, because I think, guys, if we put ourselves in their positions, you would be livid, right? You would be upset. Like, what is how? Where are they? You know, I mean, just imagine. Look at how many people are still, by the way, still out in the streets in France protesting against the pension reform from Macron. Are Germans going to protest in reference to this? Do they know? Has this information been relayed to them? Very interesting times we're living in.
And so that's why I think this independent expedition is so necessary in forcing the issue and gathering as many clues as possible, even in examining, hopefully in examining and possibly determining what type of explosive was used to make an attribution, because we can no longer trust even the target of this attack, the German government or the German media that seems to be acting as its lackey. We can't trust them. So independent media means going out there, gathering clues, gathering evidence, and putting it out there for experts to analyze. And this was just the first step towards, I think, in a much longer process in examining something that should never, ever have been allowed to happen in the so-called rules-based order put forward by Tony Blinken. It kind of makes it clear that the Biden administration is saying, we make the rules and you follow our orders.
And I just want to add something here, because I think this is a very telling moment. Remember a while back, I did explain to you that Germany had agreed to send Leopard tanks to Ukraine because the Biden administration had decided to do so. And so they felt pressured from the US government to follow that path as well, even though the majority of people in Germany did not approve of this. The Green Party in Germany did approve of it, and they decided to go forward with that order. And now I wonder how they feel knowing that this was obviously intentional. And according to the Washington Post, they're saying it's more likely to be the Ukrainian government. Max Blumenthal is saying he thinks it's more so the U.S. that did it. But either way, the thing is, it was intentionally done, and it was not Russia. And Germany signed on to send these Leopard tanks to Ukraine. I wonder how the Green Party in Germany must be feeling right now that they went along with the U.S. government instead of holding firm and waiting for more information to be released at this point in time. I really wonder how they feel. And this speaks to a larger issue, which was presented by President Macron. Again, I have many criticisms of him, but one thing that he did mention recently is that he does not think that Europe should necessarily continue to follow the lead of the US and that Europe should try to be a third world power. Would this push Germany maybe more so in that direction? BRICS is looking more attractive to more countries. We'll have to stay tuned. We'll have to stay tuned. This is a mess. I feel like if this were a soap opera, I don't know. There was a soap opera called The Days of Our Lives. I don't know. The Pipeline of Our Lives. I don't know what you would call it, but that's what it feels like. This is crazy. And who got it right? Who got it right first? Let's be clear. It was independent media that got it right first. The same people who criticized Seymour Hersh, who didn't want to talk about his article, the press briefing from the White House where they said it's utterly false and complete fiction. Independent media got it right and mainstream media got it wrong. This is not the first time that this has happened. Is this happening often? More so now. And then they wonder why people are pulling away from mainstream media. Welcome to the Thunderdome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Thunderdome. JB says, we were waiting for the shoe to drop, but clearly it was a boot. That's boot. Shout out to Hardlands Media. Kit in the chat. Keep speaking truth to power. Sabby Sabs. Thank you so much, Kit. Shout out to Hardlands. If you have not had a chance to do so, go ahead and hit that like button, guys. That helps me out with the algo. And if you haven't had a chance to do so, please take that poll. We will have call-in tonight, and we're going to get into that discussion. And I'll go ahead and take that comment on Rockfin, Eric. All right. Thank you for the tip on Rockfin, Sharon. Great discussion. Dr. West has my support, but it would be a good shot in the arm, a 1-2 punch. If Brana could step aside and put someone without the baggage to head the People's Party. Mr. Walker, it would be great if you could head the party. She's referring to Torraine, who was just on earlier. Well. I love it. I love it. Days of booty. I love it. That one's better than Pipeline of Our Lives. I love it. I love it. Okay. We're going to go into our next story in reference to media. I don't know if you have seen this, but Mike Figueredo is having some difficulty on YouTube right now. I'm actually not sharing this from my account because I'm blocked by Mike Figueredo. I don't care. Anyway, even though we've had many disagreements, and even though I am obviously blocked by him, that doesn't mean what's happening to him is correct. And I think any of you that support independent media and those of you who have independent media channels of your own, I think you need to hear this story. So I don't know if you realized, but apparently in May, Mike Figueredo left the TYT network. So if you are not familiar with that, he actually was not a regular member on TYT as a host like Anna or Jink, but he was one of the TYT affiliated networks. Secular Talk was one of those networks at one point. So was David Pakman back in the day. A lot of people don't know that, by the way, about David Pakman. Back in the day, he was a part of it. And for whatever reason, I don't know why, but for whatever reason, he decided to leave TYT last month and something weird happened. So he tweeted this: "Dear Team YouTube, Neil Mohan," don't know Neil, "and anyone at YouTube that cares. I'm a queer creator with 400K subs who discusses LGBTQ issues frequently. I lost monetization on May 1st and still haven't gotten it back. It's been utterly devastating. By the way, and you'll see this in the video clip I play, that was the same day he left the TYT network. And I'm going to break all this down, how this works in YouTube, for those of you that are not familiar. He goes on to say, this is a thread, I've literally lost almost all of my 300 plus memberships permanently that took years to acquire. Since I'm not monetized, they're being automatically canceled since they cannot be renewed. Members I've had for years will lose their royalty badges. And he actually put a screenshot here, May 9th, when I started keeping track, 171 members, and there's a down arrow that says 15%. June 2nd, total members 22. So YouTube was removing members from his channel once his channel was demonetized. Let's go on. Boop-de-boop. I left my MCN TYT network. By the way, MCN is multi-channel network. I'll explain that later. On May 1st, resulting in automatic demonetization, and was forced to reapply to the partner program, even though I've already been a YouTube partner since 2015. My former MCN has been kind enough to try to help, but even they haven't had any luck. Partner program is what, so those of us that are monetized, when you become monetized on YouTube, you get this email notification that says you are officially a part of the YouTube partner program, right? So it only happens for channels that are monetized. If you're not monetized, you're not a part of this. It's where you can seek out like help if you need help. You don't talk to an actual person though. Like you don't have a real person, but tips and things like all that kind of stuff is a part of that partner program. He goes on to say, the first week YouTube support told me remonetization was imminent. 2 weeks later, YouTube told me it definitely wouldn't take longer than 30 days. On day 30, I was told to wait a couple more days. A couple more days went by and nothing. It feels like I'm being punished. Here's a screenshot here where it says get reviewed in progress. So essentially what has happened here is that it's almost like he's starting all over from the very beginning when you first apply for monetization. Does that make sense? Even though he was already monetized and he had over 400,000 subscribers, something happened the moment he left the TYT network. And this is just, this is really unfortunate. This is crazy. Like, my channel is in good standing. I follow TOS, that's terms of service, and my ad rating is very high, yet I can't even get a straight answer from anyone. I'm going to talk to you about that in a second. Meanwhile, hateful bigots like Ben Shapiro are monetized and probably wouldn't get the same treatment if he was in my situation. Here, I wouldn't have brought other people into it, particularly because Ben Shapiro was not a part of the TYT network. This is a different situation, so I wouldn't have brought him in. I wouldn't have brought in the whole the bigot thing. I wouldn't have brought any of that into this situation because it's not like this is the only person this has happened to. This has happened to other people. So I wouldn't have just gone down that road. That's just me. He goes on to say, are queer creators disposable to you at Team YouTube? At a minimum, I deserve to know when my monetization will actually be restored. A longtime YouTube partner in good standing shouldn't be subjected to this BS for simply leaving their MCN. Again, I wouldn't have brought in this particular, like I wouldn't have brought, I don't think that has anything to do with why this happened. I just know so many people that have run into the whole demonetization issue. Like I don't think that has anything to do with it. Let me go on here. To anyone reading this, please retweet to boost its visibility. I've kept my mouth shut because it didn't seem wise to bite the hand that feeds me, but this is just downright, ridiculous. I am not going to let them ignore me anymore. I want answers. So Mike actually did post a video about this as well. God, I have so much to say. Let's get into the video and I'll chime in between.
For those of you who don't know, I lost monetization entirely on this channel on May 1st. No videos can be monetized, even older ones that were already approved for monetization. I can't take super chats. I can't take super thanks. The hundreds of members who signed up to contribute either $1, $3, or $5 each month, almost all of them were canceled. I had hundreds. We're down to 22. And the reason why their channel currently does not support monetization, well, if you joined and your membership is up for review, well, since there's no monetization, it just gets automatically canceled. That is a permanent loss of a member. And unless they manually join again, if I get monetization back, then that's just, it's over, it's gone. If you were a member for 2 years and you have that 2-year badge, well, you lose that badge now. So what happened exactly? Why was I demonetized? Did I break the terms of service? Did I post something a little bit too spicy? No, it was completely arbitrary. So on May 1st, I officially left my MCN. For those of you who don't know, smaller channels join networks called multi-channel networks, and we become partners with these larger networks because since we're too small to have our own rep to advocate for us to YouTube, we oftentimes have larger networks represent us.
Let me come in right here. I want to break this down. Okay. Long story short. TYT has a channel within YouTube. Now, some of you may hear this and you're like, well, Sabrina, everyone that has a YouTube channel has a channel within YouTube. Not really. The rest of us have channels on YouTube. TYT has an actual channel within YouTube, just like CNN does and Fox News does. They're on the corporate algorithm. Those types of channels, they actually have a representative at YouTube that they can contact when something goes awry. So like, for example, if a video is removed or whatever, I just have to submit a ticket to YouTube. I don't have a person I can talk to. My channel is not big enough for that. Like, this is for the the really large channels. And of course, those MCNs, those multi-channel networks that have a channel within YouTube, they have a representative. So because Mike was a part of TYT as an affiliate, he had access to that TYT representative. Let me say something here. I don't agree with what is happening. I don't agree with channels being demonetized. I've been vocal about this for a long time. I don't agree with people being deplatformed. I do not care. I'm sorry. I do not agree with that. I just don't. And while I have criticisms of Mike, and we disagree on a lot of things, but I will say this. I think that now Mike is starting to finally see what the rest of us who are not attached to an MCN have been dealing with for the past couple of years. Those of us who have been demonetized, I have videos some of my videos are demonetized. Those people who have been deplatformed, people who have had their channels removed entirely. I think now he's starting to see that you don't have that protection anymore that you had when you were an affiliate with TYT. They can talk about the pandemic freely. They can talk about the jab. They can talk about those things freely. They are protected by YouTube. I'm not. RBN is not. You guys saw RBN. We had a strike. You guys know about this. It's just the smaller people that don't have these reps, those of us not on the corporate algorithm, we are not protected. So I have to, use different words, avoid certain subjects or issues on this platform altogether, and only do it on Rumble or Rockfin, that kind of thing. But they can talk about those things. They can show like videos, like the police killing videos. They can show those things. They're protected by YouTube. Meanwhile, when I show those types of videos, I've shown a lot of policing videos on this channel. When I've shown some of the policing videos, I get this disclaimer on my video that says you must be 18 years or old. Like it's crazy. So I think that now Mike is finally starting to see what the rest of us have been going through. And because he was picked up by TYT, so to speak, as an affiliate, because you are an affiliate of that network, which is an MCN, which is a channel within YouTube, which has a YouTube representative, you are going to grow like that because you're on the corporate algorithm. So your channel is going to take off. This is why channels like this one, Rational National, Secular Talk was once a part of TYT. This is why like it was easier for them to get hundreds and thousands of subscribers as quickly as they did because they were on that corporate algorithm. I can show you what that looks like at some point, by the way. The rest of us are not. So I can type in YouTube, and I did this recently. You guys know as many times as I've talked about Jeffrey Epstein on this channel. I can type in Noam Chomsky, Jeffrey Epstein. My video doesn't even come up until you've scrolled through probably 50, 60 videos. Their videos are at the top. TYT's videos at the top. Breaking Point's videos at the top. Humanist Report videos were at the top. This is why like we were so suppressed because we were not a part of the corporate algorithm. I'm still suppressed like that. So unless you see me on some other show and that's how you found me, or the algorithm just happened to kick in my favor for one video, most people don't know I'm here. And that goes for most of us in independent media. Let's go on.
So my network partner was TYT Network, and I was with them since 2017. I left as of May. But as soon as I was unplugged from TYT Network, I was automatically demonetized and was forced to reapply for the YouTube Partner Program in order to continue being monetized. Now, I found that very bizarre because I was a YouTube partner before I joined my MCN back in 2017. I was already approved for monetization. Every time we upload a video to YouTube, we have to rate our video to determine if it's eligible for advertisings. And YouTube determined that my ratings were very high because I accurately demonetized videos that I needed to if I knew that they weren't suitable for all advertisers. So for me to have
Right. But once your channel is completely demonetized, you have to start all over and reapply again. That's how it works. This is what I'm saying. I know so many people that this has happened to. So it's just
to reapply to the program seemed so arbitrary and unnecessary, especially considering that larger creators like Ethan Klein, for example, who I watch, just in April, he had a huge dispute with his MCN, BBTV. He left, and there was no disruption to his monetization as far as I know. I watched...
But that's a different MCN. That's not TYT, and that could be part of it. So this is what I'm going to throw at you people. What kind of deal does TYT have with YouTube? What kind of deal does TYT have with YouTube?
His channel pretty regularly. No disruption to memberships, nothing. But a month later, so much changed on YouTube that me leaving an MCN results in losing monetization and leaving an MCN amicably. By the way, my MCN, TYT, is currently trying to advocate on my behalf to figure out what's going on, even though they're no longer my partner, even though I'm not their client, right? So nobody knows what's going on. And I've talked to YouTube and they don't know what's going on. They keep telling me different things. So the initial thing that I got was, well, it's going to take 2 to 4 weeks. I assumed it wouldn't take that long initially because, again, I've been a partner for a very long time in good standing, no TOS violations, no community guideline strikes. But within a week, I get a little bit impatient and I reach out to a YouTube representative, just basic support. I don't have an actual rep to represent me, but I talked to YouTube creator support and they said, okay, I looked at this. It looks like monetization is imminent for you. So I thought, okay, great. This isn't going to take that long. It's going to hurt because I'm losing a week's worth of revenue. And then it's going to take time once I'm remonetized to build up that revenue again. But as long as it happens quickly, that's fine. Well, weeks go by. So 2 weeks later, I talked to another representative and they look into it and they say, okay, well, you know what? It's taking a little bit longer. I'm sorry. Maybe there's a backup, but it's definitely not going to be longer than 30 days. I can guarantee your channel is going to be remonetized within 30 days.
Thank you so much for saying this, P. Walker. This is exactly what I was thinking. Mike is too trusting. I would expect that TYT is lying to him, that they've tried to kick this upstairs. I was wondering the same thing. I mean, there are other channels that have left the TYT network. David Pakman was once a part of TYT. He left the TYT network, went off on his own and blew up tremendously. Now we have our issues with David Pakman, but that didn't happen to him. Secular Talk also left TYT. Remember, Jink announced that actually on TYT. I don't know. We haven't heard anything. We haven't heard Kyle say anything like that. So I don't know if that happened to Secular Talk. It seems like it just happened to Mike. Jimmy Dore, thank you. Another one who was also once a part of TYT, didn't happen to Jimmy. So it seems like to me, this issue is only happening with Mike.
Day 30 rolls around, still no monetization. I talked to a YouTube rep and basically they say, well, okay, it's taking a little bit longer. Let's wait a couple more days. That was on Tuesday. A couple more days rolls around. No monetization. So what the fuck is going on? Now, the response to these folks, when you talk to them, they're indistinguishable from AI bots. I don't even know if I'm talking to a real person. I mean, I think they are real people, but they basically just copy and paste things that YouTube tells them to. I don't think they have any information that I don't already have. So I don't even necessarily know if it's their fault that they can't be helpful. The problem is that this is my livelihood. And now I've lost a month, permanently lost almost all of my memberships. And now it's to the point where I don't even know if monetization is ever going to return to my channel, because we were talking about this on Leftist Mafia last night and we were joking about, hey, you should play the gay card. It's Pride. You could do what you want. And I thought, I don't want to use that because that feels really disingenuous, right?
Yeah, don't. Like, I'm sorry, but don't. I don't think that has anything to do with this. There are multiple commentators and content creators on YouTube that are part of the LGBTQ community. I don't see YouTube demonetizing their channels. Like, I would not play that card.
But then I slept on it and I started thinking, oh my God, wait a second. How many times in my life have I seen people get ghosted or been ghosted myself for being gay? I've seen landlords not rent to my friends when he realizes that they're gay. I've had friends all of a sudden cease contact when they get with a partner who's homophobic. So I started thinking about this. And again, this is conjecture. I don't know for sure what the fuck is going on, but the specialists who review my channel for monetization, these are just normal people. And my channel is a very politically charged channel, right? I talk about LGBTQ plus issues. I talk about a lot of political issues. So,
but how does he know when he says they're just normal people? How does he know the people reviewing his channel are not also a part of the LGBTQ community? How does he know they're just normal people? Honey,
am I being punished? Because it feels like I'm being punished. Is there somebody who's just anti-gay who thinks that this groomer shouldn't be monetized? I mean, you start, and again, I want to emphasize that this is conjecture. I have no evidence for this, but you start to kind of, like, your mind goes to weird places when you begin to get desperate, right? And that's where we're at. I'm losing sleep over this. I'm extremely stressed out. My mental health has deteriorated because if they're never going to monetize me again, That's their decision. They have the right to do that. But I at least deserve an answer. I deserve to know whether or not that's the case. But it's the uncertainty that is killing me, because they're making it seem as if there's no way of telling, right? These specialists, they're in some sort of a fucking underground bunker, and you can't check up on them and say, hey, this large 400,000 plus LGBTQ plus creator, any updates on that? Now, I reached out.
I really don't think that is the case. I'm sorry. I feel like this is reaching a little bit. I don't think that has anything to do with it. If that was the case, that would be applied to other people who are also LGBTQ on this platform. I don't think that has anything to do with it. Honestly, it appears to me that whatever relationships that people have had with TYT along the way just don't seem to turn out good for them in the end. And all I'm going to say, oh, Jonathan. Jonathan says, wait a minute, LGBTQ aren't normal. Damn, I'm always last to know. Yeah, it just, I just don't think, I think this is a poor look here. I don't think this is fair. I just think that it's YouTube being YouTube. I don't think it has anything to do with his sexuality. So I don't know why he played that card. I don't get this.
And Team YouTube on Twitter responded with, I mean, they're not even using their good AI. That was my response to them, because they basically said, oh, well, if it's taking longer than 30 days, that means that there is additional reviews going on. There's something extra going on. Perhaps something is wrong. They didn't say this, but that's kind of the subtext, right? But that's such horseshit. Why is my channel getting so much scrutiny when I've been a partner for years?
It doesn't matter. I have to make this very clear, you guys. It doesn't matter how long you've been a partner. We've known people on this platform. In fact, one of them, Lee Camp, was just here the other day, who have been partners for a long time, and they got rid of them just like that. It doesn't matter how long you've been a partner. Again, I think the bigger issue here is the censorship, which we've talked about oftentimes, which is, in this particular situation, is connected to the relationship that his channel had with the TYT network. And you shouldn't have to be a part of an MCN to basically have protection when it comes to the censorship. So if you have a channel as large as his, that has as many videos as his has, I'm wondering if the review process is taking so long because he has so many videos. And like I said, remember when they were under that TYT umbrella, they're protected to talk about certain issues that the rest of us have to be very wary of discussing on this platform, or we have to tiptoe around certain words or use code words when we discuss it. Mike was not used to doing that because he was on that TYT affiliated as a network, as an affiliate. So he had that protection. He had a YouTube representative through TYT. The rest of us did not have that. Still don't have that. So now Mike is honestly starting to see what the rest of us have been having to deal with. And here's the thing, he blocked me. I think he may have blocked Colin too. He blocked me because we corrected him because he was incorrect on Twitter about Biden canceling student loan debt. And Colin and I corrected him on that, about how Joe Biden did not use the proper path, and the path that he was told to use was through the Higher Education Act of 1965 and not the HEROES Act. His response to us was to call us dipshits, immediately just switched and called us names and blocked us and all this stuff. And so I had to take a step back and look at it and say, if this had happened to one of us, would Mike be like, oh yeah, that's not right? Or would Mike just say, ha ha, those Jimmy Dore doorknobs, which is also what he referred to us as. So again, I don't agree with the censorship. I don't agree with what is happening here. I think it's ridiculous. But I'm also wondering if this situation will humble him in some way, so to speak. I don't know. But just because you have 400,000 subscribers and just because you were a part of that program doesn't mean they can't take you down. They can take anyone down. And I think he was used to having that protection from TYT. And so now this is really shocking to him. But it's not shocking to the rest of us.
On this fucking platform, I've been a partner for years. Every single video I rate accurately according to YouTube for monetization. I am safe for ads. And yet, meanwhile, they're being overly rigorous in scrutinizing my channel, but Ben Shapiro gets monetized. Gets floated to the top with the algorithm. Candace Owens spreads hate, spews hate speech on a daily basis. She's monetized. But the Humanist Report, no.
Aren't Ben Shapiro and Candace Owens also attached to a multi-channel network? I think they're all still up under a MCN, and that's probably why they're protected. But see, when Mike, when you left TYT, you lost that protection. See, that's the thing. You don't have a representative at YouTube anymore. So I think that's this is a big part of the thing. I mean, it's just, again, like let's just go back into the video.
Monetization. It is so draining to have to deal with this every fucking day. To check that monetization page and still see it's in progress.
I'm sorry. So here's the thing. For those of us that started after YouTube changed their policies, and let me explain what that means. People like Kyle, for example, when he started YouTube, you didn't have to have 1,000 subscribers and 4,000 watch time hours in order to become monetized. There were people that started YouTube years ago, back when you could just create a channel and boom, you could choose whether or not to have ads appear on your channel. They didn't have to reach the requirements that the rest of us had to reach. I had to get to the 1,000 subs, and then I had to get that 4,000 watch time hours. And even then, when you apply for monetization, yes, it took some time. Like, it didn't happen right away. I think it took like maybe 28 days. But it didn't happen like right away. Then they have to send you your Google like pin and all that stuff. Like it's a process. And so I think for some of these channels that have been around for a long time and they didn't have to go through what us newer commentators had to go through, yeah, I think this could be really shocking for them. But it's not shocking for the rest of us. That's the thing.
So it's to the point where I'm not really sure what to do. I don't know if this is the end of the road for the Humanist Report, because I can't do this full time if I can't support myself, right? I left a job at my university to do YouTube full time.
I would not have done that. I would not have done that. That's just my advice. I keep asking everyone else that comes on the show, what's their advice for people who want to do independent commentary or independent journalism. I make sure you got something on the side. Make sure you have some other type of revenue coming in. That's my word of advice.
I gave up a second year of funding that I secured for the PhD program that I was in to do this full time because I felt like I could make a difference. But if these,
I wouldn't have done that either. I'm sorry. Having advised students in PhD programs, they get like fellowships, or some of them get research assistantships. I would have never just given that up. It's not easy to get those fellowships again, or those RAs again. It's not easy to get that. Some people get the teaching assistantship, where you get that the funding is basically a stipend. That's what you're supposed to use to pay for, your necessities and all that stuff. And because you're a PhD student, the idea is that you're not going to have time to have another job. So they give you that stipend, but they don't give these stipends to everyone. So for me, if I got that funding, there are plenty of times like I wanted to, go towards back towards media, because that was my position. That was my field. When I was an undergrad, I majored in broadcast journalism. There were plenty of times I thought about doing this, but honestly, financially, it just wasn't the right fit. And especially for grad school, at one point in grad school, I got a scholarship. Like, what if I would have just given up that scholarship? No, I would have never done that. Nah. And this advice to all of you: finish your schooling. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be funny, but finish your schooling. If you get free money to go to school, you finish that first.
platforms aren't going to respect LGBTQ plus creators and effectively try to eliminate us from it.
I don't think that's what this is. I don't think this has anything to do with, guys in the chat. Let me know if I'm wrong. If you feel I'm wrong, let me know. I'll listen. But I don't think that has anything to do with this.
By not granting us monetization forever, what am I supposed to do? I mean, I really didn't want to talk about this one because I feel like other creators oftentimes, particularly on the right, they use instances of like demonetization and whatnot to push some sort of a fucking grift. And I hate that. And I don't want people to think that I'm trying to exploit this crisis for my own monetary gain. But I'm coming to you saying I have to use my platform now to advocate for myself, because being quiet and polite to YouTube very clearly has not behooved me. And, you know, it never made sense to bite the hand that feeds me and start attacking YouTube more directly. But what else do I do? Being quiet hasn't worked. So I've got to make as much noise as possible and get them to pay attention to me, because they've been trying to ignore me. And I just can't allow that to happen.
All right, look, the big thing I want you to take away from this is that there has been some unfairness that has been happening in the space for quite some time. And those of you who are watching, your commentators, you know how the deal works. There are certain platforms that have a channel within YouTube itself, and they are exempt from a lot of the issues that we, the rest of us, cannot talk about and will be penalized for. That is the big issue. So I brought up this question on Twitter and I said, should content creators and independent media peeps on YouTube, should all of these people at some point try to either make a push to unionize YouTube? I mean, guess technically we're contractors, or nationalize YouTube? Because I don't like just talking about the problems without some type of solution. Should there be some type of push to unionize YouTube so that the content creators on this platform are protected, so that you don't have to be a part of an MCN like TYT in order to have that protection? That's my take on this. I think that's honestly where this needs to lead. How many more people is this going to happen to? So for those of you asking what an MCN was, MCN for YouTube creators, multi-channel networks help successful YouTube creators monetize their content and make videos they may have previously been beyond their capabilities. And with YouTube having over 2 billion monthly active users, there are now more opportunities than ever for creators to find success on the platform. If you're considering signing up with an MCN to help build your channel, you must make an informed decision. You have fees that you have to pay to belong to the MCN, and their contracts are legally binding. You can't just change your mind once you sign up for a specific period. While MCNs can offer you many benefits to grow your channel, you also have obligations to them. To some extent, you lose your independence as a YouTube creator. So that's important. And yes, those networks do help those channels grow. I don't know. This is why I don't belong to anybody. Like, I'm a part of RBN, but RBN is not an MCN. Just want to make that clear. We don't have a channel within YouTube. If we did, we wouldn't have received a strike. We're not big enough. We're not at that level. So the thing is, it's just this is why I don't know. Let me go to some of these comments. Oh boy. Thank you for the super chat, Matt. Thank you, Sabby, for breaking down and reporting on the events in the world. You're welcome. Thank you, Ashura. As the pipeline turns. That's another good one. Thank you for this. Days of our booty. That's these are funny. I'm sorry. Thank you for this as well, Ashura. Mike lost all of his TYT privies after departure. Unfortunately, that's how it works with these MCMs. Oz says Mike is being a hypocrite here. What's up, Oz? Thank you for the super chat, Ashura. Mike, monetization went down the pipeline. Ashura's got jokes tonight. Thank you for the super chat, Nicole. It's like he is with the pores. Yeah. JB says, I just got to 2,700 subs today. Meanwhile, on the corporate algorithm, other channels are exploding in subscribers. Yeah, we are heavily suppressed. I'm not as suppressed as I was like a year ago, but thank you for the super chat, Ashura. Jackson, Hinkle, and Franco are heavily demonetized. Yes. Michael says, yeah, Sabby showed up in my algorithm 4 months ago after years of rising and breaking point videos. Yeah, like I told you, they're on the corporate algorithm. Colin says, I think Mike got pissed at Anna R.E., her trans comments. Interesting. Thank you for this as well, Ashura. TYT knife in the back while pretending they care. He's going cuckoo with his right-wing BS excuses. Sabby Mike, he's not humble. He has no tears for you. You are torturing us with this clown. Leave him. This dude is crying, saying he's not crying, but is. Thank you for those, Ashura. Thank you for the super sticker, Aberdeen71. And thank you for this as well, Ashura. Now I see why Jimmy had to buy his channel. I don't know what that means. I didn't know Jimmy bought his channel, but he's a large channel, you know, like very interesting, very interesting. Please leave this clown alone, Sabby. Thank you, Ashura. Oh man, I'll take the comment on Rockfin and we'll go to the next story. Thank you for the tip on Rockfin, Roger. Time for a class action lawsuit for you to get your money. State attorney generals to enforce the 2015 model Revoke Corporate Charter Act to start revoking YouTube corporate charters and call up Lena Khan, chair of the FTC, who's pro antitrust, and call up Garland to start trust busting YouTube. Yeah. Okay. Thank you for explaining, Angie. Jimmy had to buy his channel from Jink. Oh, that is interesting. I didn't realize that. Okay. Ashura, I think, bought the rights to the Jimmy Dore show from TYT. Yeah, I mean, like I don't know, man. Thanks, Ashura. Jimmy had to buy his channel from Jink to keep it. See, this is all coming out now. This is crazy. This is crazy. All right, we're going to go into this next story here. RFK Jr. So it was really interesting to me. I was on Rising recently, and I was explaining to people, you know, how I did not agree with RFK Jr. Deleting his tweet in reference to Roger Waters. And I also don't share his views in reference to this conflict with Israel and Palestine. You guys know how I feel about that. You know, I support BDS. You know, I support Palestinian movement. And people contacted me and said, I think you got it wrong. I don't think he really feels that way. I got emails and DMs, but I didn't get it wrong. If you have not seen this, Rabbi Shmuley posted this in reference to RFK Jr. You need to hear this. Today, I met with Democratic presidential candidate RFK Jr. and discussed Israel, the rise of anti-Semitism, and Kennedy's recent tweet where he supported Roger Waters. It was courageous of Bobby to come and meet with me and reassert his lifelong support of Israel and the Jewish people, continuing in the legacy of his great father, who was murdered by Palestinian gunman Sirhan because of his own support of Israel in 1968. Rabbi Shmuley and Kennedy discussed the volatile situation in the Middle East and the challenges facing America for more than 2 hours. Listen to this part, guys. Kennedy explained, I'm going to make this bigger. Kennedy explained that his tweet about Waters was in response to someone sharing with him a picture that Waters flashed of Kennedy at one of his concerts, saluting the candidate's willingness to swim against societal currents. Bobby told me he had no idea that Waters was a vicious anti-Semite, and when he studied the issue and the facts, he immediately deleted the tweet. So I have never gotten the impression that Roger Waters is anti-Semitic. I have seen numerous interviews with Roger Waters. I've never gotten that impression. I've never heard Roger Waters talk about hating anybody. And for RFK Jr. and Rabbi Shmuley to just make this blatant smear about Roger Waters, that was very concerning. What is happening here? Let's go on. I believe Bobby and I thank him for his repudiation of Waters. How tragic it is for Waters to have his legacy as an anti-Semite now overtake his legacy as an accomplished artist. I don't think that has overtaken his legacy. Look, people still rock Pink Floyd, okay? I don't know what to tell you, but people still fuck with some Pink Floyd. Don't get it twisted. All you got to do is put on Dark Side of the Moon and people are like, oh, taking you back. Older people, younger people, people still will rock to some Pink Floyd. And I don't think this overtakes his legacy as an accomplished artist. Let's go on. Kennedy said his dedication to Israel's security is unshakable and unalterable. So remember when I said on Rising that maybe someone should have that discussion with him and maybe he can be moved on that issue? According to the rabbi, it's unshakable and unalterable. So again, he's speaking for RFK Jr. I mean, RFK Jr. isn't saying this is really weird to me. He also said that he reserves the right to challenge some of its policies, for example, as an environmentalist with regard to water rights. Rabbi Shmuley agreed that the beauty of Israel as opposed to all of its neighbors is that it's an open democracy with a free press and just like America welcomes criticism. Kennedy and Botek discussed the Holocaust. Gotta be careful with this on YouTube. They talked about genocidal threats of the community. I told Bobby that his father was one of Israel's greatest friends, and we in the Jewish community mourn him till this day. I then asked him to please march with me this Sunday, June 4th, at the annual Celebrate Israel parade, and he immediately agreed. The conversation was riveting. While we disagreed on many issues, he speaks with a refreshing and nonpartisan candor. I look forward to jointly marching this Sunday to champion the Middle East's only democracy and the world's only Jewish state. And here's the picture of them here. So for people wondering, well, how do we know they actually met? There's a picture. And there's also a video. Let me come out. There's also video footage. Let me go back here. I think I missed that somehow. That would be on my page, but it's also on his page. Give me just a second. There were a lot of people at this rally. This dude tweets a lot. I guess I can just go back to my page. Sorry, guys. I thought I had this. Okay, here we go. Here's the parade. So RFK Jr. here is at the parade with them. Here are pictures. So grateful that my friend and great friend of Israel, RFK Jr., marched with me today with an Israeli flag. This was in New York. And then there was also the video. Here's the video. Let me just pause it for a second and then open it up for you.
No. 1 second.
I want to thank our dear friend Bobby Kennedy, phenomenal friend of Israel and the Jewish community, for joining us to celebrate Israel Parade on Israel's 75th birthday. Bobby, this crowd loves you.
God bless Israel. I'm going to be a champion for Israel as president, and God bless you.
And you see how much they have, the love they've shown you, your family's legacy, your family's contribution to America, and the friendship between Israel and the United States. And God bless you, Bobby. Thank you very much. Thank you, Bobby.
So that happened. Now, some of the pushback that people are giving in reference to his position on Israel and Palestine is that, well, he can't go against the lobby, right? He can't go against the lobbyists. Obviously, if he does that, they're going to heavily come after him in reference to his campaign. Well, the DNC is going to come after him anyway. The Democratic Party is going to come after him anyway. They're already coming after him. The media is coming after him. And my thing is like, no, like, I think I would really like to see him have this conversation with someone who is very well informed about this particular issue. I would actually like to see a panel discussion of RFK Jr., Marianne Williamson, and Cornel West about this particular issue. Not a debate, just a panel discussion with a strong moderator that, you know, isn't attached to either one of these candidates, right? Because I feel like the Palestinian people are getting lost here, lost in the narrative. And it's just, you watch the videos and I'm seeing these kids being dragged out of the homes. Like, it's just, they have nothing, like nothing, stripped of resources. Like, how is that okay? And oftentimes people they'll mention the conflict between Israelis and Palestinians in Israel. But I think there's another group that is often sometimes forgotten about, and that's the Ethiopian Jews. And we've talked about them before on this show. Mint Press News did really good coverage about this, showed video footage. Eric, if you can find that, let me know on Twitter. Showed video footage of what's happening with Ethiopian Jews that live in Israel. A lot of them that were born there, and they're being pushed out as well. And so we need to find a way to have a conversation about this, to get people to understand, you know, that the Palestinian people and the Ethiopian Jews are not disposable, that they're people too, that they also matter. And it's sad that I have to say that, but I'm looking at people like him and I'm looking at people like Marianne Williamson, and you guys sitting here saying some good stuff in reference to racial harmony, right? But how am I supposed to support, like, for example, Marianne, you have a reparations plan on your platform. Now, obviously, activists have argued with her and pushed back on that and said it's not enough. And I totally get that. But you have reparations on your platform in reference to, you know, African, you know, descendants of slaves in this country, descendants, right? Or some people refer to them as freedmen. But when I look at your views on Israel and Palestine, it's like you support reparations for descendants of slavery, but you believe in two-state solution when it comes to the Palestinian people, when you know it's not going to be equal, because you know the Palestinians are the minority, they're not the majority. And when it comes to resources, you know that the Palestinian people have less resources than the Israeli people in Israel. So this separate but equal philosophy does not work. It's not going to be equal. So I'm confused. RFK Jr., I covered his campaign on the ground in Boston. He talked about his family wanted to bring people together in reference to racial harmony and all that stuff. And he wants to continue that as well. And that he's fought for Black communities and indigenous communities in reference to environmental pollution as an environmental lawyer. And I totally get all that. But at the same time, you're like against I don't know what to say. That's not the one, Eric. I'll pull it up. It's on Twitter. It's a video. But Max Blumenthal had something to say about this. So I told you Max has been making the rounds. Max has been making the rounds this week. And I want you to hear what Max had to say in reference to this smear to Roger Waters and what else he has to say to RFK Jr. Listen to this.
Retracted. What do you make of his recharacterization of why he supported him and his generalized comments there on the Israel-Palestine conflict?
Yeah, I don't find it credible. I know Bobby Kennedy Jr. He knows better. And I've been supportive of him as a candidate who can actually open up space to discuss issues that are frozen out by an undemocratic Democratic Party. And I don't think this is credible. He knows that Roger Waters is the world's most famous supporter of liberating Palestinians from open-air prisons like the Gaza Strip, hideous refugee camps like Sabra and Shatila, and 70+ years of continuous ethnic cleansing. He has to know that. Roger Waters actually never opposed COVID mandates, so I don't even know what he's talking about there. It appears with this walkback that he has fallen under pressure from one of the most powerful and undemocratic forces opposed to the First Amendment in the US, and that is the Israel lobby. And it feeds the perception when Bobby Kennedy Jr. marches in the Israel Day parade with Shmuley Boteach, a far-right former reality show race hustler whose entire salary is paid by the Likudnik Adelson family, that he's not actually an anti-establishment candidate, that he is fallen under the sway of far-right Likudnik oligarchs.
So here's the thing too. I didn't realize, like in reference to the rabbi, I didn't realize like he was far right. I looked into this after I saw this video. I didn't realize that. I also didn't know until Max said this that he was a reality star or something at that point. But it's just how can you oppose right-wing politics and right-wing government in the United States, but you can align with and coalesce with right-wing politics in another country? Something to think about.
In favor bombing Iran. And this is troubling to the grassroots supporters, including the grassroots base of the Democratic Party that he's running in. For the first time, we've seen a Gallup poll show that more Democrats support Palestine over Israel. I mean, it's a bad way of framing the question, but it shows that he's out of step with the grassroots base and fuels the perception that the Israel lobby is even controlling this outsider campaign.
Joel, how would you respond to that?
So this was kind of a debate. This is another guest that's on the show as well.
Sure. I mean, Robbie, first and foremost, I agree with Max that it's not credible. I think Bobby Kennedy clearly was backtracking on a position that he was fully aware of regarding Roger Waters and Waters' anti-Semitism and support for positions on Israel that run antithetical, quite frankly, to human rights. He's talking about displacing Jews from the state of Israel in order to achieve peace. That's not peace. That's a humanitarian crisis that he's advocating for. And I think also it's very important to note that Bobby Kennedy's family history and the Kennedy family history in support of Israel and Jewish self-determination is real. I actually think at some point, though, we do have to listen to the candidate, and maybe it's a change from the tweet. But I actually think he was sincere in his position. I think it was strong that he said he supports human rights and peace for the Palestinians, a state for Palestine, quite frankly, as well within that. And, he's not credible in the backtrack, but I think we have to look at the voice, and the voice is saying something eminently reasonable, and it's pointing out that Roger Waters and what Waters is saying and how he's doing it not only is offensive, but even the German Jewish community found it deeply anti-Semitic. He's up there shooting pig balloons with Stars of David on it. Nobody can argue that that's nothing but adding fuel to the fire of hatred of Jews.
Max, I want you to weigh in on the idea of the underlying substance of what Roger Waters is doing at his concert. Is it, in fact, anti-Semitic, as Rabbi Shmuley characterized it on Twitter? I just want to.
So I'm going to skip over that because I've covered that before. And also there's something said here I have to be very careful about. So I just want to skip to the next one here.
Injected into the heart of historic Palestine in an open way, because that's what your supporters want.
Joel, do you not recognize any part of what Roger Waters is doing as satire?
Well, first of all, regarding Pink Floyd, it's not very hip. It's from my generation. I'd like to think maybe I'm hip at some level, but it's pretty old music. And I do see satire.
Then why aren't you familiar with it?
I'm extraordinarily familiar with it. What I'm not comfortable with in any way, shape, or form, and I was in Germany recently talking about anti-Semitism. In Germany, using Nazi symbology, using a pig with a Star of David on it and then shooting it down. I think it's pretty clear that when the Jewish community that's in the location where that concert is taking place says this is offensive, we don't like this, this helps promote extremism, you got to kind of take them at their word.
But Joel, let me push back against that.
Wait.
Well, the pig also contains the cross and the Islamic crescent on it, and and Roger Waters is not shooting it. And I don't think it's a representation of organized religion.
The context of Roger Waters is on Israel. The context of Roger Waters in Israel is very clear. He opposes the state of Israel's existence. He wants to do boycotts.
As a Jewish exclusivist state.
And Max, you know what? I'm a strong supporter of peace between Israel and the Palestinians that have been for decades. And I think that we should get there. I actually think if the Israeli street was calling for boycotts like there was in South Africa and the hundreds of thousands of protesters protesting for democracy right now, if that's what they're calling for, I think you would see an elevated call for it as well here in the United States. But they're not. His position is not about supporting peace. His position is about eliminating the state of Israel. And that, quite frankly, is a pretty important concept.
Is that true, though? I don't think that's what I've heard. I got to fast forward a little bit here. I don't think that is what I've heard Roger Waters say. And I've seen him at multiple interviews. So I don't think, I don't know about that. I don't know about that. But I do think, let's go to this piece here, because Max says something else.
I'm saying with categorically anti-Semitic is telling the Jewish people that the right to self-determination as an independent sovereign people does not belong to them or to us, that Jews somehow should be singled out as not being allowed to have an independent state that is Jewish in character and a majority of Jewish citizens. That's part A.
Just like white Christians in the U.S. violently demographically engineer a state.
So what Max was adding in there, he was talking about white Christians in the United States. And I guess the example I think he's trying to make is, what if the United States became like a white Christian state? So like people who are here, people who are Muslim, people who are, Buddhist, atheists, agnostic, were just slowly pushed out because they weren't Christian. I think that's what Max was trying to add in there, but I think he got cut off. Sorry about that.
In a minute, Max.
To getting to Bree's question, Max. To Bree's question, you're absolutely right, Bree. Without a doubt, this occupation is way past overdue. Without a doubt, there needs to be a two-state solution. Without a doubt, the settlement enterprise has encroached upon Palestinian territories that are preventing a feasible, practical, physical separation that enables the Palestinians who want their own state to have their own state. And that's where the real tension is right now inside of Israel. There's a real tension clearly in the United States, where the majority of American Jews, we support a peace process, a peace outcome. This government in Israel is not moving in that direction. Deeply problematic. But that doesn't mean that eliminating the state of Israel as a majority Jewish state must be the way to resolve it. And the point of history on this, when there was no state in between the Jews and the Palestinians before 1948, and they lived sort of under British mandate and with each other, there was constant civil war. That is not a recipe for peace. What a recipe for peace is an actual agreement between the two sides. That's what we need to be fighting for, not eliminate.
But why hasn't that? So please, and inform me, those of you in the chat, why hasn't that happened? Why hasn't there been a resolution for peace? Like, I get where Joel's coming from, and he's talking about like, they need like some type of resolution, but why hasn't that happened? Let's go on.
One of the sides.
We're gonna have to go in a minute, but I want to give you the last word, Max.
Well, Joel and I are extremely privileged American Jews who have two countries thanks to Israel's settler colonial project, while the Palestinians I met who are caged for the rest of their lives in the Gaza Strip have no country, and it's because they are not Jewish, and the state of Israel as it currently exists is dedicated to violently demographically engineering a Jewish demographic majority, something that no Jewish American would permit from white Christians in the United States. What Joel calls the destruction of Israel is actually the inclusion of Palestinians and a binational state with equality for all. That is what he's equating democracy with destruction. So what does that say about the character of the state of Israel? And what does it say about those who are attacking Roger Waters? It says that.
Let me come back just for a second. So I guess the question I have, like, does Joel believe that in order to reach that point of peace, that there needs to be destruction first? That there needs to be chaos, that out of the chaos will come peace?
Of Israel is actually the inclusion of Palestinians and a binational state with equality for all. That is what he's equating democracy with destruction. So what does that say about the character of the state of Israel? And what does it say about those who are attacking Roger Waters? It says they're fundamentally opposed to democracy, and they support, in the words of Hakeem Jeffrey, they support Israel today, tomorrow, and forever. He was essentially citing George Wallace on segregation.
Well, fascinating exchange between both of you.
So he invited not Roger Waters, RFK Jr. Let me see if I can go back to that. There we go. I think this is let me go back a little bit. Was it this one or another one? I don't know. Max has been everywhere.
I believe Bobby, and I thank him for his repudiation of Waters. What do you make of that characterization of Roger Waters?
Well, it's amazing to see someone as forceful and brave on so many issues as Bobby Kennedy Jr. allowing a discredited race hustler like Shmuley Boteach to put words in his mouth. And it really emphasizes how powerful the Israel lobby is. But to the point about Roger Waters, he's performing The Wall. This is a 43-year-old rock film that is possibly the most famous rock film in history. And what he's performing there in his concerts, which he has been doing across the United States with no complaint, is mocking a fascist demagogue. He's paying tribute to Anne Frank in his performances. The problem for the Israel apartheid lobby is that he's also paying tribute to Shireen Abu Akleh, the journalist who was killed in the line of fire deliberately, apparently, by
And I think we all covered that story over at RBN.
Israeli forces, and they cannot allow a universal interpretation of the Holocaust to include all people. So they have to demonize Roger Waters and show how unhip and uncool and out of it they are, that they don't even know what The Wall is. And
that's the other thing too. How many people criticizing the performance have actually seen the performance? Like, how many people just saw maybe pictures here and there on social media, but they haven't actually seen the performance?
I really feel sorry for Bobby Kennedy Jr. to be wrapped up in this and to allow himself to become kind of a hostage. So I want to extend an invitation to Bobby. If you can suffer through the likes of Crystal Ball lecturing you on the science, then you could join me live at the Gray Zone for an open and civil discussion about what I've witnessed for years, reporting from behind the Israeli apartheid walls around the Gaza Strip and the West Bank. And let's talk about this issue openly. Let's talk about the ethno-supremacist ideology and the settler colonists injected into the heart of historic Palestine in an open way, because that's what your supporters want.
So that was an open invitation there from Max Blumenthal to RFK Jr. to come onto the Gray Zone and have the discussion. Is it going to happen? I don't know. Is he going to be willing to go on there and have that discussion? I don't know. I know when I talked to his press people recently, I know they said, like, I'm in a queue. I don't know. I don't know if he'll ever come on the show, to be honest with you. But I reached out the week that he made the announcement. I did cover his announcement on the ground because it was local here in Boston. But I don't know if he'll come on this show. I don't know if he'll go on the Gray Zone to have that discussion. I don't know. But for those of you asking me, like, Sabby, have you reached out? Yes, I did back in the day. And I double checked about 2 weeks ago. And they said that I was in the queue, but I don't know, you guys. I don't know if he would come on and do it. But I want to show you this video here from Mint Press News, because I think we can't just talk about the Palestinian people. We need to talk about what's also happening to the Ethiopian Jews as well. And you need to see this if you haven't seen it.
My kids, especially my sons, is not safe here in Israel.
kasi may kaplaba, לא יודע, אני לא יודע, אין לי מושג.
By the way, that was the Real News Network. See this? See this? The Real News, or excuse me, the realnews.com. Like, a lot of people aren't talking about this particular issue. They're talking about you know, the issue with Israel and Palestine, but a lot of them are not showing you what's happening to Ethiopian Jews that are also there as well. It's just disgusting. Oh, something happened to the sound there, Eric. I don't know. Yeah, I can't hear anything. You may have to. Yeah, I can't hear anything. We may have to come out and come back, remove it and come back in. That's Twitter for you.
לצאת מהארץ שלנו.
She said, if I am racist in order to preserve my life, then I'm proud. Like, see, these are the things they're not showing you. So I saw that stuff there. Okay, here we are. He said, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? I don't know why. For some reason, the sound cuts out there. But it says, you were not refugees. You will not become refugees. Yeah, it's just, there's one more part here I want you to see. It says, what an Ethiopian needs to do, leave our country. Now, just keep in mind, some of them were born there. It says, go back home, go demonstrate in Sudan. And what do you have happening in Sudan right now? You have the beginnings of another proxy war. We covered that on RBN. This part, you should all be in camps. And this one with the police officer, when a police officer confronts an Ethiopian Israeli suspect, it is natural in his mind to suspect him more than anyone, more than he would someone else. Like, does that sound familiar to you? Isn't that what we have here with the police state in reference to African Americans? These are things they're not showing you. What would RFK Jr. say? If I showed RFK Jr. this video, what do you think he would say? What do you think he would say? Yeah, I'll show it, Eric. It's crazy. Like, I don't know what to say. I really don't, but you need to see all of it, not just one side of it. You need to see all of it. Thank you for the super chat, Zach. RFK didn't study the issue. He was shown the video of Roger with the armband. Actions speak louder than virtue signal, like RFK lobbies for Sirhan release. And thank you for this as well. I don't want to see him talk about this issue. I want them to talk about how they will close military bases in the Middle East, because that is change. Yeah, but Zach, I'm sorry. If he wants to be president of the United States, he is going to have to deal with this issue. So he is going to have to talk about it. We can't like shield candidates from certain issues that we feel they may be weak on. Thank you for the super chat, Roger. Sabby volunteering herself to be the moderator. No. Thank you for the super chat, Ashura. Dude, where's my booty? RFK Jr. is a joke Democrat. Ashura, thank you for that. Shane says there's a long history of the liberal left in the USA being all for democracy at home and imperialism abroad. Well said. Thank you for this as well, Zach. Y'all have taken him in bad faith the entire time. No, not true. I've told you the pros and the cons. But if you don't want to hear the cons and you only want to hear pros, I don't know what to do. Thank you for the super chat, Ashura. There should be a book called Pipe My Boot. You know what, Ashura? I'm just going on. Rodrigo says, I remember when Sabby was at 8K with like 88 of us in the chat. I remember too. Yeah, I remember. What's up, Rodrigo? Indy Left says, hi, Sabby. I vote none of the above. Okay. I can only put 4 choices, by the way. For YouTube polls, I can't put 5 choices for some reason. Thank you for the super chat, Roger. The first step towards peace is the U.S. stop arming them. Ashura says RFK has no love for Palestinians because of Israel money. Thank you for the super chat, Nicholas. Max Blumenthal is anti-Semitic. Max Blumenthal is Jewish, but thank you for the super chat. Zach, thank you for the super chat. Did RBN reveal themselves over the pandemic? Maybe they were too afraid to speak up for mass oppression, so quick to condemn others who weren't afraid. What are you talking about? We were never pro-mandate. Don't know what you're talking about here. In fact, the reason why we got the strike was because of that topic, by the way. So, no, you're definitely wrong on that. Wrong network. Wrong network. Okay. We are moving on to our final story, which I'm pretty sure most of you heard by now, that Dr. Cornel West has announced that he is running for president for 2024. Before I get into that, I just want to remind you, because there was a time, these should be flip-flopped. There was a time when I brought up this idea. I think the first person I brought this up to was Aaron Mate, actually, of all people. We were talking about third parties. So this was over a year ago. I brought up this idea of what if it was someone like Cornel West. So we're going to go all the way back and we're going to start from the beginning and show you where we are now. And no, I did not recruit Cornel West to run for president. Just making that clear. But listen to this. It's just interesting how things turn out, right? I think it could work if you have someone who has a large name recognition. It has to be someone that everybody knows. Yeah. And I'm just going to throw this out here. This person has never said this, but for example, someone like Cornel West. Yes. Someone that everybody knows, like it has to be someone big. I hate to say it, but it's true.
If it was Dr. West, that would be incredible. I don't know if he wants to be a politician, but someone like him, someone as eloquent and as principled as him and as charismatic. I mean, someone like him would be perfect.
Now that was, what was this video? Geez, this is a while back. That was 1 year ago, streamed 1 year ago. Okay. So Aaron said he wasn't sure if Dr. West wanted to be a politician. So I decided to ask Dr. West myself, and I did. So this interview took place 8 months ago. So here we go. And actually, I think that interview with Aaron was more than a year ago. I think YouTube is just rounded off. So I asked him myself, listen to what he said. Would you ever consider running for president as a third party or independent candidate, and why or why not?
I mean, I'd do anything to try to enhance the situation of poor people and working people. I'd sing a song in the shower. I'd get my violin out after playing for 20 years, classical violin. I hadn't played in 40 years, but I would play a new song if I could contribute to the plight of poor and working people. It's just that when you look at the, look at it, just how, what's the right word? I mean, just how corrupt the system is, though, that you have to think long and hard as as to whether you really, really want to become a bona fide member in it. I mean, me and Brother Bernie had long talks about this, because I love my brother dearly and he loves me. But we had real disagreements on a lot of things, in terms of the Middle East. I mean, he's very critical, of course, of right-wing Zionism and so forth, but I'm critical of, in a much more broader and substantive way about that in relation to Palestinians. He's done been progressive on a whole host of crucial issues, Wall Street, strong as he can be. But I'll tell him, what is it like just to be inside of the halls of that level of legalized bribery and normalized corruption? And my brother Bernie is, well, it's not easy, brother. It's not easy. I said, I don't know if I can live my life like that. And the same would be true for running for any kind of office. On the other hand, if it's just an effort of education and consciousness raising and so forth and so on, who knows? Who knows? But what did Brother Chris say?
So I told him earlier that I also asked Chris Hedges the same question. I was asking everybody this question. He said no.
He said,
he said the Green Party did ask him one time before, and he said that he thinks he feels like more comfortable like doing what he does now than doing something like that. Same thing you mentioned about the corruption and stuff like that. But okay, so to answer Aaron's question, it turns out that Dr. Cornel West apparently does want to be a politician. I was very surprised by this announcement, though, even though I showed you those videos. That was a while ago. I was surprised by this announcement. JB hit me up via text and said, check the group chat. And I was like, I was awake, but I wasn't fully alert. You ever have those mornings like you're awake, but you haven't had like your tea or your coffee yet? I hadn't had my tea yet. And I looked down at the phone and I was like, what? So Cornel West did make the announcement that he is going to run for president, not through the Democratic Party or the Republican Party, but through the People's Party. And here's that announcement video here.
In these bleak times, I have decided to run for truth and justice, which takes the form of running for president of the United States as a candidate for the People's Party. I enter into quest for truth. I enter into quest for justice. And the presidency is just one vehicle to pursue that truth and justice, what I've been trying to do all of my life. I come from a tradition where I care about you. I care about the quality of your life. I care about whether you have access to a job with a living wage, decent housing, women having control over their bodies, health care for all, de-escalating the destruction of the planet, the destruction of American democracy. Democracy creates disruption. It creates an eruption. It creates an interruption. Wide from below, the energies of everyday people is manifest. And I know there are precious people in your life who you care for. That's why it's important for you to be involved, important for you to participate. We're not talking about hating anybody. We're talking about loving. We're talking about affirming. We're talking about empowering those who have been pushed to the margins. Because neither political party wants to tell the truth about Wall Street, about Ukraine, about the Pentagon, about big tech. Neo-fascists like Brother Trump or milquetoast neoliberals like Brother Biden. Wow, I'm so happy to make a world-shaking decision. You know what I mean? Well, I know gangsters when I see them. And gangster's not a subjective expression, it's an objective condition. Do we have what it takes? We shall see. But some of us are going to go down fighting, go down swinging with style and a smile, accenting the best in you and trying to tease out the best in me. Let's do it together.
All right. So that was his announcement there. And people definitely lost it yesterday on Twitter. It has over 17.2 million views. And of course, Chris Hedges this was the first one I saw that dropped the article. He was on it, of course. And he said that Dr. Cornel West announces he is running for president. Now, I'm not going to read the entire article because I want you guys to read it. Sorry, a little bit of homework lesson here. But one of the things that really stood out in this article is that it is very clear that Dr. West has changed his position a little bit in reference to the war in Ukraine. Now, in a positive way, he is calling for the disbanding of NATO. When I interviewed him, he understood like both sides of it, but he also felt like, I think at that point, I don't think he understood everything that the gray zone has revealed, that Seymour Hersh have revealed, like those types of things. And he has moved further now to say like NATO's got to go. So shout out to Chris Hedges for dropping that, that bombshell as well. And I'm going to show a couple of different clips here. He made the first interview announcement on Russell Brand's show. And I think some people were surprised by that. They were like, why announce it on independent media and not mainstream media? Have you seen the way that mainstream media has treated people that are trying to challenge Joe Biden? I wouldn't have announced it on mainstream media either. I think, give that attention to independent media. Plus, Russell Brand has an international audience. Russell Brand has over 6 million subscribers on YouTube. He's blowing up on Rumble. So it makes sense that he would choose to announce it over there. There's 2 clips I want to show you from this discussion. The first clip is in reference to his platform, which I think you will want to see. Let's get into that first.
Well, one, I am a thoroughgoing abolitionist when it comes to poverty and homelessness. In fact, I told my beloved wife that when I win, and I intend to win, my attitude is I don't want to even go into the White House until every fellow citizen has a house.
That's a good point. His presidential pledges challenging the corporate duopoly and building the People's Party as a major alternative to the parties of endless poverty and war, fighting to get money out of politics, guaranteeing health care and a living wage, smashing the surveillance state, abolishing mass incarceration, protecting the environment. And it goes into more detail on the website.
Oh, that might not be too practical. Well, that's the spirit that I proceed. That is the attitude that I have. That office is simply a vehicle to pursue truth and justice that begins with abolishing, completely eliminating poverty and homelessness. It has to do with a commitment to strong support of trade unions so that living wages becomes a reality for every worker, no matter what color, no matter what gender, no matter what sexual orientation, no matter what region. It has to do with access to health care, Medicare for all, the very thing that my dear brother Bernie Sanders made so much of, and rightly so. It has to do with a tremendous indictment of the greed of the 1% at the top in ways in which we can get some accountability. I love your talk, Brother Russell, about decentralization. I think you're absolutely right that the state has become captured by corporate power. And I know my dear brother RF Kennedy talks about that, Jr., and he's right as well. We resonate with the ways in which the state has been captured by corporate wealth. But the question becomes, how do you empower everyday people and working people in such a way that it doesn't reproduce centralization that tends to reproduce domination? And here we need to bring together some of the best minds. I'm not in any way suggesting that I have definitive answers. As a jazz man in politics, I know, just like Mary Lou Williams, the Duke Ellington, the Count Basie, I need a band. I got to have a variety of different voices, and they come in all colors, they come in all genders.
So that was very well said. And then another thing that Russell Brand brought up, which I think is really a great question to ask. So Russell asked this question, so I don't have to ask you now. So Russell, thank you. I can because I have so many questions. I'm like, that's one of the questions I can take off my list. But and that's in reference to the media. How are you going to deal with the media? And I want you to hear Cornel West's answer to that. Is, first of all, I got a shout out on here, which is really interesting. I was surprised by that, but listen to what he says in reference to how to handle the media and the way the Democratic Party is going to go about this.
People, I feel for a long time, there's been a real appetite and need for significant change. The figures that I've just listed, all in their way representing it. You worked with Bernie Sanders, who I know a lot of people feel was sold out, having voted along with militaristic policies since the election of Biden. And perhaps Bernie would have been better off remaining an independent. Do you feel that with the media operating in the way that it does, you will be given the sufficient opportunity to convey these points and indeed to build the band and make the alliances necessary for an undertaking like this? For if institutional or centralist politics means anything at all, it is the ability for these systems to represent the needs of those who most need it and to regard as important the individuality and freedom of people from across the cultural spectrum of America, people that have traditional perspectives around their religion and the way they want to organize their individual societies, people that have very progressive views. All of these voices have to be heard, and indeed for those kind of policies to be implemented, it seems, as you've just alluded to, that decentralization would have to be a significant part of it. Are you willing to be the voice and carriage of an ideology that to a degree would be dismantling many of the corrupt deep state institutions that have brought America low, to break down some of the relationships between corporate interests and the democratic institutions that have meant that it's almost impossible for the voices of ordinary people to be heard? It seems like you said in your answer earlier, these are the kind of ideas and words that get people killed and that require, I think, a great deal of support. Before you answer, should we leave this and go exclusively onto locals for our locals community before we get Dr. Cornel West? I'll leave it to you. What do you think, Gallery, or do we stay on Rumble? Should we stay on Rumble for the audience? We'll stay on Rumble.
Just to answer that question for those who are not aware, I saw someone just ask that question in the chat. Is this interview on YouTube or just Rumble? I couldn't find it on YouTube. I thought it was going to be there and it was more like the first part of the live stream, but I only saw the interview on Rumble. That could change. Maybe they just haven't added it yet, but so far I only saw it on Rumble. They still continued this interview on Rumble, by the way, when Russell Brand is asking, should we move to locals? They continued it on Rumble. It may be on locals as well, too.
Well, now, but do join us over on locals. We'll see if Dr. West has time to join us a bit longer. So could you please, answer that question for me about what do you think those voices that were talked about change from Obama through to present day mean? And are you happy to carry a message that that is by its nature truly radical and therefore dangerous?
Well, the good news is that we have shows like your own. We got Sister Amy Goodman. We got Sister Sabby. You got Sister Brianna. You got Brother Tad.
I couldn't believe I got a shout out on this mofo, man. I was like, what? Someone messaged me and said, your name was mentioned on Russell Brand's show. I was like, whoa.
You got Brother Roland. You got a network of people that are trying to allow certain voices to have impact without being completely devoured by the corporate media. And the corporate media now is experiencing a level of legitimation crises, very much like the Republican Party's establishment that went under as neo-fascist Trump moved in, and the establishment of the Democratic Party that we almost pulled off with Brother Bernie. We almost pulled it off, and then they all came together. The call from Obama,
yep.
Pete drops out, Amy drops out. Next thing you know, they said anybody but Bernie. Why? Those corporate interests were being challenged. Why? Those militaristic policies were being at least examined. I wish Bernie was even more radical when it comes to militarism. But that's all right. He's always my brother. I can disagree with him and still acknowledge that I have my own calling and I go my own way. He played a very historic role. It just didn't go far enough. He missed that moment, and this is my own view about this thing, but he still plays a very important role. So
So I thought it was important that he said that he acknowledged that Bernie missed that moment, and he acknowledged that publicly. Some people still aren't willing to do that. They're still not willing to do that. There seems to be some type of hesitancy to say that about Bernie Sanders, but it is the reality. Jesse Ventura has said that publicly multiple times, but to hear Cornel West say that and knowing that he's pretty close to Bernie Sanders, I think that was a telling sign.
I always like to begin with the good news, though, brother. The fact that you've got all of these millions of people around the world listening to your powerful voice and vision and calling for the enabling virtue, which is courage. Because without courage, all the other virtues are empty. And by courage, we're not talking about self-righteousness. This is not a self-righteous campaign. You can't be a self-righteous jazz person. You have to be humble. You got to learn from people. You got to learn from people. And I think that's something that I will say I have noticed. It does seem like Dr. West is willing to at least hear you out, even though there may be disagreements. When he came on last time, I told him that Joe Biden was fascist, and we disagreed on that at that point in time. I think he may see things a little bit differently now. But I told him, I said, well, I think that Joe Biden is also a fascist. I don't think it was, that's just something that exists on the right. And I gave specific examples. I gave the crime bill that he co-wrote with Strom Thurmond. I gave examples of some of the remarks in reference to that Joe Biden has made about the African-American community before, yada, yada. I still have a very strong reservations about Joe Biden. But that being said, some people were wondering if mainstream media would ignore him. People were like, oh, they'll just ignore him. That's actually not happening. In fact, mainstream media covered this immediately once it was announced. Cornel West was trending on Twitter. The People's Party was trending on Twitter. And this just goes back to what I said to Aaron Mate in the first clip I showed you in reference to the story, where I said it needs to be someone with a big name. And that's the thing. If you're going to do third party and you really want to get the message out, it needs to be someone that most people have at least heard of. Most people know who Dr. Cornel West is. A lot of people love Dr. Cornel West, and not just people from his generation, not just people that are in academia like him, but I mean older people, my parents' generation, my grandparents' generation, younger people love Dr. West. He just seems to, it's like his message and his presence he's found a way to be able to talk to people across all different spectrums, and he's still respected at the end of the conversation. And that's not easy to do. So he's found a way of doing that. Now, to my point about mainstream media coverage, they have covered this already very quickly. And I want you to hear what's said on Fox News, how they think that this actually may be a problem here for Joe Biden, even though he's not running through the Democratic Party and Cornel West is choosing to run third party. Listen to what they had to say on Fox News. I think this is interesting.
Happening on the left, I think, is a little more fascinating, maybe. Laura, look, there's a clearly growing disenchantment with Joe Biden as the Democratic candidate, and it's coming from the left. RFK Jr. has already jumped into the race. He did a big Twitter interview today. Well, now Cornel West is throwing his scarf into the presidential ring.
In these bleak times, I have decided to run for truth and justice, which takes the form of running for president of the United States as a candidate for the People's Party. Neither political party wants to tell the truth about Wall Street, about Ukraine, about the Pentagon, about big tech. Do we have what it takes? We shall see.
We shall see indeed, Laura. Look, this is a threat to the president. As an African-American leader here is challenging him in a third-party run. And Biden needs black voters to win re-election. As Congressman Donalds was telling you a moment ago, black America has been taken for granted, and nobody else is talking about these issues.
Yeah, but let's not pretend like all of a sudden Fox News cares about black Americans being taken for granted either, okay? Let's not sit here and pretend that all of a sudden you guys care about, us being taken for granted or whatever in this country. Let's not go down that road. All right. Okay. Gotcha. Now, what's really interesting is he said that Biden needs Black voters to win. I would reframe that. I wouldn't say Biden needs Black voters to win. You got to hit it at the party. But I think this rhetoric is done on purpose. The Democratic Party needs Black voters in order to win. That's what you say. You make it very clear that the entire party needs for that to happen, not just Joe Biden. It doesn't matter which Democrat is in the seat. The party needs you in order to win. I would have framed that differently, but let's go on.
RFK Jr. and Cornel West are going to push issues that Biden has been trying to cover up for years.
Yeah,
we'll see what happens.
Biden's never going to debate them, and the media will do their best to ignore them. But I've got to say, Cornel West, he ticked off all those issues, and I'm thinking, okay, surveillance state, Pentagon, Ukraine. I agree with him on probably all those issues. Remember, he used to come on the radio show or the show a while ago.
I know, and he's been on this show with us, Laura. And RFK Jr. is going down to the border for 3 days, something Biden certainly doesn't want to talk about. We'll see if the Democratic Party begins to look anew at these issues and if they make a difference.
Never.
They ain't gonna make a difference. Democratic Party isn't gonna make a difference. Again, they answer to the military-industrial complex and Wall Street. Now, as you can imagine, people have already taken to social media criticizing Dr. West, and I'm talking about people who praised him when he worked on the Bernie campaign, criticizing Dr. West because he's not running through the Democratic Party instead of applauding him for not running through that, crazy rigged party. Criticizing him because he's choosing to run with People's Party and not the Green Party. And I want to say something about that. What was interesting to me, not everyone, but some of the people who were criticizing him for running through the People's Party and not the Green Party, some of these people are the same people who have spent years criticizing the Green Party and saying they're not viable. Like, this was hilarious to me. When I'm seeing this on Twitter, I'm like, really? Because for the past 2 years, you've been complaining how the Green Party is trash and it's not viable. Now, all of a sudden, Cornel West is running through the People's Party. Now you say, Dr. West, I really love and admire you, but I wish you would have ran through the Green Party. The same Green Party you told me a couple months ago was trash. There are a lot of operatives out there, folks. There are a lot of them. And I told you a while back, I did not believe all these people that said that they exited actually exited the party. I didn't believe that. And now you're starting to see people's true colors. Now, this is not to say that the People's Party doesn't have issues. I'm not fond of the People's Party either. My main issue with the People's Party is Nick Brana. And we've had that discussion on this show. And I've interviewed Nick Brana on this show. And for those of you that saw that interview, I have many criticisms. But my main criticism of that party is Nick Brana. The Green Party has issues. We've talked about this on this show with Green Party members about how the Green Party rigged their primaries for Howie Hawkins. We've talked about that. I talked about it with Green Party members. I talked about it with Jesse Ventura. Hello. So we've had that discussion on this show about the Green Party too. It was just really funny to me that all of a sudden these same people who hated the Green Party and said it was worth nothing were like, you should run through the Green Party. People are starting to really reveal themselves. I'm just keeping it real, because the same people who have told me that they're supporting Marianne because of the issues, the platform, I'm starting to see, which is what I thought, it was mainly just because she's a friend, or mainly just because you like her, you know her personally. When you look at Cornel West's platform, if he's also running on Medicare for all, but he's also pushing against the surveillance state. He's anti-war. If you look at his platform, Marianne's not. And in my opinion, his position on Israel and Palestine is the better one between Marianne and RFK Jr. Let's remember, he was refused tenure from Harvard because he supported the Palestinians' right for their movement. It takes guts to do that. So it's very revealing, folks. It's very revealing. People telling me that they were not supporting Marianne because they like her or know her. It was just because of the policies. Well, if it's just because of the policies, and you have agreed with me that you don't like her position on the war, and you don't like her position in reference to Israel and Palestine, but you do like Dr. West's positions, but you're like, no, I'm still going to vote for Marianne. It was never about the policies, boo. It was about your friend. Everybody's showing their whole ass. Excuse the language tonight. And that includes Crystal and Kyle. Caleb Maupin, someone sent me this. Caleb Maupin really went at it. I'm not going to show this whole video clip that took place here. I don't want to do that to you. But this piece here that Caleb brings up, Jesus, I don't know if I agree with everything that he says, but listen to this.
When it comes to Cornel West, I love Cornel West. We had him on Crystal, Kyle, and Friends.
Yeah, everybody loves Cornel West. And that's why you have to deal with the cognitive dissonance, social media being rigged to tell you to hate the People's Party, and them nominating a guy that everyone loves.
He's a hero of mine.
He's
Oh, he's a hero of yours. He's a hero of yours, right? You know, so many people love him. You don't want to attack him, but that's what you're doing. You're smearing his election campaign. You're smearing the party that he chose to run with.
You do respect him, yeah.
And we like him. And look at how her face goes down. Look at how Crystal's. Oh yeah, we like Cornel West. They don't like Cornel West. They don't respect Cornel West. No, they don't respect Cornel West. But they know they're not going to gain any points by attacking someone that progressives love. So, oh yeah, we love him. He's a hero of mine. We're so important in our sunglasses. We're so sexy.
Right. It's easier to attack and criticize RFK Jr., at least for them, because his base is a little bit, kind of all over the place. He has people on the right that support him, independents that support him, so it's a little bit easier to take shots at RFK Jr. than it is for Dr. West. Whew.
Oh.
Love how he's really good at going into spaces where like people would disagree with him,
yes,
and making himself be really likable and
does
really
an amazing
agreeable
job
while
at
not.
that.
Oh, she totally means that. Yes, he does an amazing job. She's looking down with her sunglasses. She hates Cornel West's guts.
While not like giving up his principles at all.
Yes.
Yes, this is the stuff we practice saying beforehand because we don't want to alienate everyone who loves Cornel West, but we hate his guts. This is what we.
He did a great job on Joe Rogan's podcast. He's just a very dynamic, charismatic.
I'm sorry. He did a great job on Joe Rogan's podcast. You do realize Cornel West has been around for decades, right? He's been doing stuff since the 80s. He was key in getting stop and frisk ended in New York City, leading acts of civil disobedience.
He also worked with the Black Panthers. Like, he wasn't a Black Panther, but he worked with the Black Panthers. And it was just kind of funny. The first thing that popped into Kyle's mind was he did a good job on Joe Rogan's podcast.
That's what you got. He was good on Joe Rogan's podcast. Really. That's what you got, Kyle. That's what you know about Cornel West. He was good on a podcast one time. This is one of the most well-respected Black intellectuals in America, has been arrested many times in civil disobedience protests, as an outspoken advocate of socialism, a critic of the prison industrial complex, someone who's been fighting for low-income African-American people for decades. But, he was good on a podcast one time. And we've been told we can't just take a dump on him. We're going to make this about Nick Brana. Okay. Ugh.
Intelligent guy who I happen to agree with on.
Oh my God. Like, so condescending. Yes, he's a very intelligent guy. Why don't you call him well-spoken too, right? He's a well-spoken, intelligent person, right? I mean, this is such condescending white liberal shit. I saw him on a podcast one time. He did a good job. He's intelligent. Yeah, he was intelligent. I was surprised. Black people usually aren't intelligent, but he was good on Joe Rogan's podcast one time. This is the most smug upper class liberal while they're driving their SUV down the highway, mad that someone's running against the Democrats. This most smug, white, liberal, condescending shit I've ever heard,
Probably 90%.
I wasn't used to seeing this side of Caleb, just FYI.
Of policy stuff.
Yeah.
So I love Cornel West.
I love him. I love him. Yes. NPR. I love black people. Right. I mean, that's the trendy thing to do now. That's woke. Right. Black Lives Matter. Word up in the hood.
Love Cornel West.
I love him.
But honestly,
yes, we love him. We love black people. That's the hip, cool thing to do now. That's why we're driving down the road in our SUV. That's why we vote for the Democratic Party, because we're totally woke, brother. That is how it is, right? We hate low income Trump red state people. Trust us. If we could shoot somebody in the NRA, we would totally do it. We wouldn't buy the gun first because gun ownership is totally racist. But yes, we love black people. He did a great job, a tremendous job on the Joe Rogan show. When he went on that Joe Rogan podcast that one time, I saw him talk, and it was just utterly amazing. Oh my God, oh my God, let's go drink some latte.
Theory on this, and I'm curious what you think, Crystal, is that I don't think he looked into the People's Party at all.
I'm just going to pause there because this was probably the most hilarious part to me. Guys, Kyle says he doesn't think Cornel West looked into the People's Party. Cornel West spoke at the People's Party convention. I'll show you the picture in just a second. At one point, if I'm not mistaken, and correct me if I'm not mistaken, I thought at one point Dr. West was a part of the board of MPP. So either they didn't do their research or they did know that and they're purposely lying. Like, this doesn't make any sense to me. Like, that was really bad. Again, people have their criticisms of People's Party, but how do you not know that? Oh boy.
Right. I just think this black guy is so stupid that he never looked into the party he decided to run for office on. It's not his fault. He's being manipulated by, evil communists, right? It's not the black people that are protesting for their rights. It's those outside agitators from New York City that are coming down there and stirring up the black people. They were all happy before the civil rights movement got going. But, Cornel West is just clearly not intelligent enough to know what party he's running on. It's an evil communist agitator named Nick Brana who manipulated good Cornel West into doing what he's doing. We love Cornel West, but he's been duped. He's been duped into doing this. Good Cornel West would support Biden, but I mean, this is the most condescending, racist, white ass shit I've ever seen.
You know what I mean? Like, I genuinely think it's sort of like a boomer moment where
he's calling Cornel West stupid. Can you believe this? He's basically saying that Cornel West doesn't know what he's doing. Cornel West.
This is so embarrassing because Cornel West spoke at the People's Party convention, Kyle. He was on the board. Yes, thank you, Eric. I thought so. The advisory board. Thank you. This is so embarrassing. So he thinks that Cornel West is having a boomer moment and he doesn't know about this party. Jesus.
Is a good person, but he never Googled the People's Party like we did. This is really, really fucking racist. I mean, this is really racist. I mean, can you believe this? They're trying to tell us that Cornel West doesn't know what party he's running on. You think Cornel West hasn't heard all the garbage they've thrown at Nick Brana? I mean,
Thank you for saying that, Caleb. Exactly. Do people actually think that Cornel West is just stupid? Boy, I tell you.
This is shocking to me. Right? And these are the same people that are always, they're so woke, everyone's racist. These folks, they're saying that Cornel West is too stupid to know what party he's running for president on. It's a boomer moment. He just doesn't know. I mean, this is holy shit.
He was
Now let's pretend it was Marianne. You see the problem? Okay.
Approached and, hey, we want you to run and be our candidate or whatever, which by the way is a whole separate question because usually the way these things
And he was approached, you know, some bad people walked up to good Cornel, who we love. We totally love. We don't hate.
You mean the same way? You mean the same way they approached Marianne? Publicly on stream?
And some bad people walked up to him and manipulated him into running for office. They tricked him. He would never have done this. He's a good guy. He's a good person, but some bad people tricked Cornel into running against the Democrats. Oh, it's a shame. It's a shame.
Is you have a fucking primary to determine who your candidate is going to be, and the People's Party apparently just anoints somebody, which is
the same way you guys just anointed Marianne Williamson. The same way, I'm sorry here, the same way the DNC anoints people, which is the party that you support. Is this serious? Like, I can't take these people seriously. Because let me show you something. Okay. Look at this. All right. Look. Now, these were some of the speakers. This is the People's Party convention in 2020. I'm taking you back. Okay. I'm taking you back. There was Danny Glover. There was Nina Turner, Ryan Knight, Jimmy Dore. There's Mike Gravel. There's Dr. West. And whoop, there's Marianne Williamson. Sabby never forgets. I didn't forget this. So I just want to say that what is the real problem here? Because also in that video, they go on to say, Kyle says, well, you know, if he ran through the Green Party, it would make more sense because the Green Party is more viable. I'm like, after I listened to you shit on the Green Party for years, after I listened to you shit on third parties for years, now all of a sudden you're okay to say the Green Party is more viable. Maybe he should have done it that way. Bullshit. If Dr. West would have ran through the Green Party, you would have this same criticism because he's not running through the Democratic Party. Just call it what it is. You guys are Democrats. Just say that. Let's stop trying to pretend this is something different. I didn't have time to play the whole video, but also in that video, Crystal goes on and mentions some outside, if you're going to do an outside thing, maybe something like DSA. DSA is an organization. DSA is not another party, a third party. It is an organization that promotes and props up and runs progressive candidates through the Democratic Party. Like, they're not even trying to get it right. And I don't even want to hear about the viability because they know damn well Marianne Williamson has no chance of winning. They know that. But they need that to happen. They need to have that candidate running on the progressive side of the Democratic Party because that's what supports their brand. And DSA is not what it used to be. They can't even keep members. Now, it's really interesting to have that criticism. I don't want to make this all about them, but I want to point out something because originally, Justice Democrats, there was supposed to be support for third party. Let's go down to ideology and issues. If you're new, you probably have not seen this on my channel yet. So this talks about Kyle and Jink when they started Justice Democrats. This piece right here, most of these things never happened, by the way, but this piece right here, I want everyone to pay attention. Implementing instant runoff voting nationwide in an effort to make third party and independent candidates more viable. That was a part of Justice Democrats. And that piece was never implemented because it was more difficult to do. They didn't want to work hard, so they went with the easier option. Just a reminder for you folks. Just a little reminder. But obviously, there is the question about the People's Party because people are like, they're not on the ballot, that kind of thing. Yes, that is an issue. Dr. West will be here Thursday. I will ask him about that. My assumption, and I could be wrong, but my assumption is that he is probably an independent, but he has to attach himself to a party because some states you have to have party affiliate. Like, for example, New York State. For New York State, you have to sign a party. I think this is a newer issue with New York. Lucy and I were talking about this. So it could be that maybe he attached himself to People's Party because of places like New York where you have to have a party. So it could just be that. I don't know. Dr. West will be here Thursday. When he's here Thursday, I'll ask him about all of this. But it's hilarious to me, man. I saw all the infiltrators and trolls just coming out of the woodwork. People I ain't seen tweet on Twitter in about months, all of a sudden just coming out and be like, how dare you, Dr. West? I can't believe you. I'm disappointed. Ben Dixon, all these people coming out and say, how could you do this? How could you da-da-da-da? You're giving the election to Donald Trump. You're giving the campaign to so-and-so. These are Democrats doing this, not Republicans. It's hilarious. So I just, look, it is what it is. Dr. West, you can see his campaign platform. What just happened? Okay, sorry. You can see his campaign here. Policies: create true democracy, get money out of politics, and ban corporate lobbying. Revitalize the economy. This is where he talks about housing, education, living wage, Medicare for all. Of course, that's a no-brainer. We knew that one was going to be there. In the wars. So that's what I'm saying. The people who are like, no, Marianne don't have the, in the wars, expand civil liberties, guarantee equal rights to all American, end surveillance, the drug war, mass incarceration, break up big tech. For those of you who are against what big tech is doing, and protect the environment, remove oil and gas subsidies, drilling on public lands, and invest in clean energy. I mean, this is a no-brainer, people. It's a no-brainer. Now, he'll be here Thursday, so we'll talk to him about it more. But it's really funny to me, man. It's really funny, the people coming out of the woodwork and just like, how dare you, Dr. West? I can't believe it. Why aren't you running as a Democrat? Because the party's fucked up. Because as much as we've talked about building a third party movement, you're not going to build anything if you don't actually take the first step. Nothing's happening. The Green Party's got some crazy shit going on. And if they run Howie again, I hate to say I told you so. Just keeping it real. I have my issues with the People's Party. I still think Nick Brana needs to just remove himself from that altogether. But we can talk about that Thursday, and we can talk about what the plan is and what the strategy is. But it's really interesting to me. People are like, how dare he run in this party? This party is corrupt, and the Democratic Party is not. Don't let me give you the side eye. Don't let me give you the side eye. All right, we are going to do call in. Let me go ahead and show that poll, Eric. Let's go to that. This will be interesting. All right, thank you for the poll. 1,057 votes. Who would you vote for in 2024? Well, Joe Biden, I hope you look at it. Joe Biden, I hope you are looking at this. 2% said Joe Biden. 31% said RFK Jr. Marianne Williamson, 2%. And 66% said Cornel West. I hope all of them see this poll. Don't know what to tell you there, but that's that. So I'm going to take a quick break. I'm sorry, I'm just laughing because the hypocrisy is hilarious from what I've seen on TV. Quick break. I'll come back. We'll do call in. We'll talk about this on call in and more.
All right. So this is the part of the show where we give Sabby a quick break before we go into the call-in. Let's take a peek at our call-in for tonight. Let me bring that up. Here we go. tonight, as you might expect, we'll be doing call-in about Cornel West 2024, and we want to hear what you think. Sabby's going to be back here shortly, and then we'll jump into call-in. You can get it call-in through the link. Hey, let me throw that link into the chat. Sabrina will probably pin it to the top of the chat shortly as well. You can get into that link into your browser. You can install Call-In on your smartphone, search Sabby Sabs, and you are in. Dr. West has announced. What do you think? Tell us about what you think. And I'm going to take this opportunity to catch up on some of our chats that have come in. Let's see what we got. Thanks for the super chat. Zach Boyles said Nick was just talking about getting it wrong at first. Thanks for that. Ashura coming in with the chats tonight. I bet we'll hear even more from Ashura in the call-in. Thanks for this, Ashura. No reparations plan or black agenda. Don't see it. Yeah, that'll be a good question. Yeah, I think talk to Sabby about having that question on her list. Should Dr. West have reparations in there in his platform on his issues? That's a good question. I think he should. Thanks for this super chat, Mary Ebony Collins. Wouldn't surprise me if Spike Lee created this. Yeah, talking about Dr. West campaign announcement video, which was really good. You had the music, you had this whole concept of the jazz president. I found the video quite moving, especially the first time I saw it. I'm kind of describing myself generally as cautiously excited about the Cornel West 24. And from Ashura, does the Fro need to go? Afro Mab need to join? Thanks for that, Ashura. Maybe you can tell us what you mean when you come and call in. And see, Ashura says Roland Martin is pro MSMBS and is an HRC Democrat. Yeah, that sounds about right. And Becca C, thank you for the super sticker. Oh, excuse me. And Ashura, thanks for this super chat. KKK Griff now wish they had waited longer for CW. And we got one more here from Mr. Ashura. Kyle was at MPP Summit, I think, or was it Medicare for All? Yeah, I think it was probably more the Medicare for All that Kyle was supportive of back in the day, or maybe the force the vote type of stuff. Yeah, Kyle wasn't great on the Medicare for All marches, but I think he was pretty good on force the vote. I don't think he ever had any participation in People's Party. And let me bring up, we got a couple here on the rock fins. Let me swap things around. See, I gotta swap around whether we're showing polls or whether we're showing Rockfin chats. Let's get on to that. Here we go. Thanks. Get over there. Thanks for this tipped comment on Rockfin from Crone of Heresy. There's a really good documentary on YouTube titled How Britain Started the Arab-Israeli Conflict. It explains so much about today. Thanks for that, Crone of Heresy. And we got here, let's see, we got from Mr. Roger Meadows. Abby Martin interviewed young Israelis who said Palestinians should all be wiped off the face of the earth. Yeah, I mean, when you look at some of these interviews and these things about people in Israel, it does seem like in some ways it's not a healthy society. It's really their views of the of Palestinians are can be more than a little bit disturbing when you're seeing them. Yeah, the other thing I wanted to look at here, let's bring up this Cornel West site again. Scroll that up where we want. Here we go. Yeah, so I think this campaign site is really well done. You know, it's not huge at the moment, but it's got things that are on there. I mean, he's got some professional people. You know, at the start here. He's got to have some kind of team, because he's off to a good start, in my opinion. You know, just coming right into it. You know, the picture, and justice is what love looks like in public. You know, one of mine, and I think many people's favorite quotes. And you get quickly into the policies. And I mean, I was joking to Sabby when I read this. It's like some of this sounds like it could have come from my proposed 11 demands. If you're curious about that, you can go to 11demands.org, just something that I've been working on and put out there. But some of these things, like create true democracy. I mean, I talk about, we need demands for real democracy, clean out government corruption and create a true democracy, get money out of politics, ban corporate lobbying. I mean, this is, I love this. I mean, just putting the money in the corruption front and center. It seems like a heck of a good start to me.
And it's the first thing you see.
First thing, it's centered.
Yeah, it's the first thing. Yeah.
And we can talk about it on the call-ins.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, so we are going to head on over to call in. It's up for me, George. It's up on my phone, so I don't know. But we're going to go ahead and head on over to call in and continue this discussion for you late nighters there. This is episode 110, Cornel West 2024. Dr. West has announced he is running for president outside of the duopoly through the People's Party. What are your thoughts? So let's go ahead and head on over there. The link should be pinned now to the top of the chat. Yes, it is. So I will see you on the other side, friends. And thank you for the tip, Dave. Thanks, Eric and Sabby, for the stream. You are welcome. All right, guys, let's head on over to call in. I'm off tomorrow since it's Wednesday. I'll be back Thursday night with Dr. West. Bring your questions. I have my questions, and let's do the damn thing. All right, guys, you know how we do this. Have a good night. Keep up the fight.